Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S. back with another, it's been a minute, episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 3, Episode 13. So I know we've been going for a quick minute, but again, we're going to get back on these and getting the information out, as well as the collaboration with y'all in the community as we building on these topics. So, as we usually do, in regular fashion, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put up the logo for tonight. Of course, our logo for the season, as well as I'm going to put down in the comments the topics for tonight. And as I'm doing that, y'all let me know how y'all doing, how y'all feeling, and what's the word. Because it's important, man. We got to know what's the word and what's going on around us. But yeah, and as y'all are doing that too, shouts out to those who watch this now, as well as will be watching this later, whether on Instagram or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and drop a subscribe to your brother at A.D.V.I.S. Speaks. Again, a subscribe, like, comment, share, all of that stuff to A.D.V.I.S. Speaks. We'll appreciate it highly, and thank you for watching the content. But as that's going on, for tonight's episode, I should say, we're going to be getting into these different topics. First, as we usually do, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk about current events and news, stuff that I've seen and has passed, at least today for me, of news. So I'm going to talk about that on this first portion. It takes about 20-30 minutes. If you want to come in later, you can come in later after that. And second, we're going to get into the topic of individualism versus collectivism. Speak on that, give our thoughts, have some convos. And lastly, we're going to talk about, is selfishness a virus affecting the community? Think about it. Now, as that's happening, I'm going to let some people come in, get some time to get in here, and then after that we will get started off with the show song, reiteration of this, and then jump into the current events. But appreciate all y'all that is in here. Much love and respect to each and every one of y'all. Hopefully all is well with you this evening, and if not, I am sending you much love and more peace, that you do have a great evening and beyond. All right, let's get some things ready. I see, so shocking. Alright, we'll keep that up. But alright, as that is going and doing its thing, looking in and out, the power plus the instinct is spatial. Awareness of everything. So, with that, y'all, let's go ahead. Let's get into with the show song. Again, if you don't know it, it's all good. You'll learn it. And I keep saying eventually, but it's going to happen soon, where you ain't got to hear me singing no more. And it's going to be a real song. But here we go. What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? Tell them, like, what's the word? What's the word? What you heard? We gotta know, yeah, what's the word? Once again, y'all, peace and love. This is your brother A.D.V.I.S, and we are back with another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, Season 3. This is episode 13. Thank y'all for y'all patience, your support, as well as your concerns of what's been going on. Again, life goes on and it continues, and all you can do is brush the dirt off your shoulders and keep pushing forward. So we back again, got to get this going on and happening. So we are here with another episode, and we got some more topics and things for y'all to talk about. So as that is going, again, the topics that we're going to cover tonight, we're going to be talking about current events, which is going to be coming up right after this spiel. Then we're going to get into individualism versus collectivism. And lastly, we're going to speak and talk about is selfishness, a virus affecting the community. Keep that all in mind. But with that, let's talk about and get into these current events. The current events I got for y'all today, I got exactly 6 articles. So we're going to go through those 6. 3 of them talking about more global health issues that are happening. The other 3 talking about other global and maybe even local issues that are happening. So with that, let me give y'all the first one we're going to talk about. So let's look on some updates on these global health crises or issues. So first article comes from Fox News, and the headline reads, "New virus detected in China affects 35 people. What to know?" Again, y'all, we got more and more happening. So I'm going to read 3 paragraphs and we'll be out to the next article. Again, if you want to read more on this, I'll state the article title and where it came from after reading it. But let's get into this. Article reads, "Health authorities are on high alert after reports of a new virus has arisen in the People's Republic of China. At least 35 people have been infected with the lingua henipa virus, which they call A.D.V.I.S, in China's Shandong and Henan provinces in the northeast, according to Taiwan's Center for Disease Control," so Taiwan CDC. The health agency cited a recent study from the New England Journal of Medicine, which is titled "A Zoonotic," and again the hemnipa. Again, y'all come to get me to miscorrect or mispronounce these words. Virus and febrile patients in China, and there's also an article in there of that study. But researchers who monitored the infections found that the A.D.V.I.S virus symptoms appears to share similarities with the flu, including fever, cough, headache, muscle soreness, fatigue, loss of breath, or loss of appetite, loss of appetite, and nausea. And then again, there's more and more that goes into it. But another big one that I wanted to touch on is that it says that this virus, the hemnipa viruses can infect humans and cause fatal diseases, according to that same study. These viruses are typically found in bats, rodents, and shroots. Shroots. Again, me miscorrecting or mispronouncing these. But with that, y'all, so this is a new virus that's popped up in China. And again, they're on alert, figuring out more and more about what this is. There's studies that's out there, whether it's fatal, and that is another zoonotic disease that's causing another health crisis. So if y'all want to read more on this article comes from Fox News, and the headline reads, "New virus detected in China infects 35 people. What to know?" On to the next one. Now, this next one, yes, I'm still talking about some more viruses and diseases. And another one that's popped up, according to NPR, is about polio. So, this article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, while I'm going right back here, we need something right here to be. The headline reads, "Polio vaccine boosters are offered to London children as the virus spreads." So for those who don't know, and I still need to know a little bit more about, again, polio, but that's one of the first viruses that came out that was being treated. So the reemergence of it is, for some people, very, very troubling. And it's interesting of how that is reemerging. So 3 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads, Children ages 1 through 9 in London were made eligible for the booster doses of a polio vaccine Wednesday after British health authorities reported finding evidence that the virus has spread in multiple areas of the city, but found no cases of the paralytic disease in people. Britain's health security agency said it detected viruses derived from the oral polio vaccine in the sewage water of 8 London boroughs. The agency's analysis of the virus sample suggested transmission has gone beyond a close network of a few individuals. So it's become widespread. The agency said that it had not located anyone infected with the virus and that the risk to the wider population was low. The decision to offer young children boosters was a precaution, it said. Most people in Britain are vaccinated against polio in childhood, according to WHO. Only 1 in 200 polio infections lead to paralysis. Most people don't show any symptoms. Again, I can read more on this article and what's happening with it, but if y'all want to know what's going on globally with polio, where it's reemerging and things of that sort, this is one spot that you can check out, but you also Google this stuff. But again, this article came from NPR, and the headline reads, polio vaccine boosters are offered to London children as the virus spreads. Yes. I'm not trying to just giving y'all it's all this virus and the disease. Just making y'all aware of that among us still living through a pandemic with COVID, there's other diseases and viruses reemerging or popping up and showing themselves. So again, be safe. Now, the next article I have from you, again, this comes also from NPR, and the headline reads, with supplies low, FDA authorizes plan to stretch limited monkeypox vaccine doses. Again, and for those who don't know about monkeypox, or they have a different abbreviation of it, you can look this up, but it's an outbreak that has recently emerged in the same family as smallpox, so on and so forth. But I'm going to read 3 paragraphs and then we'll be out. Article reads, with the monkeypox vaccine still in short supply, the Biden administration is changing how the vaccine is administered in order to stretch its limited number of doses. On Tuesday afternoon, the federal health officials announced their decision to allow the Genios vaccine, if I'm correct, it's a Genios or Jinxios vaccine, to be administered between layers of the skin, what is known as an intradermal injection, rather than into the fats as it's currently done. There's different methods of how the injections and things are made. If you want to look that up specifically, again, look into this article and you'll find that. By offering the shot in this way, only a fifth of the dose is needed for each person. So we rationing these doses right now. To make the change, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization to authorize the new dosing and injection strategy for the vaccine. This follows last week's decision by the U.S. Department Services to declare monkeypox as a public health emergency, and an additional declaration today. What's going on, Kenny? Peace and well love. Good to see you up in here. What's the word? Thank you for coming through. What's the word Wednesdays? If you got anything, let me know how you doing, how you feeling, and what's the word. Even with the change, a person who still needs to receive 2 doses need to receive 2 doses of the vaccine. Last one. The FDA authorization also allows those under 18 who are considered at high risk of monkeypox infection to get the shot. However, the population will still receive the vaccine through subcutaneous injection, not the alternate method of injection between the layers of the skin. So it's happening, and that's what's going on right now. But with that, y'all, this has been the second article, or the next article, third article. Again, if you want to know more about what's going on with monkeypox, the whole situation, things of the sort, you can Google this. But as well as the article that I read, this came from NPR, and the headline reads, "With supplies low, FDA authorizes plan to stretch limited monkeypox vaccine doses." But yeah, not good to see y'all all up in here doing the Alien Space Queen in the building. Let's do our thing. Said Toph Energy. Know what it is. Do what you gotta do. Do what you gotta do. I appreciate it. But I got 3 more for y'all, and after that, we'll continue on with what's going on in the show, or the episode for today. All right. As well as if y'all have any articles that y'all want to share, or any news that you want to add to what's going on in this news portion, please put it in the comments. As well as even if it's good news for yourself, please share it. We take good news, all relevant news. Please put it into the comments. All right, the next article I got for y'all comes from Fox News, another one, and the headline reads, "North Korea soldiers in Ukraine would be logistical mess Putin wouldn't allow, Russian expert." So there, if y'all still don't know, there's still the whole Ukraine and Russia war still happening right now, either for the resources, rather for, the whole situation of how it ended up starting in the beginning. And there has been a development of Russia and China now have publicly merged themselves again to be supporting each other. But this is an article talking a little bit more about what that looks like, or is a mess, or what it may be. So 3 paragraphs again, and we're out. So, article reads, "Climbing Russian casualties and reports suggesting that Russia is now looking to North Korea." If I'm correct, if I said North Korea, I'm sorry if I said China. My bad. Run that back. It says North Korea. Don't mind me. China as well too. To aid its flagging troops, raising eyebrows this week as some begin to question whether Moscow would drag Pyongyang into its war in Ukraine. So, Russian expert and former intelligence officer in Russian doctrine and strategy for defense agency, Rebecca Koffler, threw cold water on these claims and said that they were implausible. So it's not technically going on. But reports claiming that North Korea may send up to 100,000 soldiers to aid Russia's campaign in Ukraine began to circulate on the Western and Russian news sites this week after the pro-Kremlin Regnum news agency released an article earlier this month suggesting as much. It says, Pyongyang will be able to transfer its tactical units to Donbass. The article continued. So, supposedly there is some help, but at the same time there isn't. There is still suspicion of that, if that's going on. But yeah, just know that there's no end to this right now. It's just still ramping up as it goes. But if y'all want more news on that, again, you can check CNN for live updates. I didn't go look for the live updates this time, but this article in particular comes from Fox News, and the headline reads, "North Korea soldiers in Ukraine would be logistical mess Putin wouldn't allow, Russia expert." But yeah, more and more chaos to continue ensuing. But yeah, now last 2 I got for y'all, and we'll move on to the next topics. For folks who like to get their mail, and I'm not talking about UPS, I'm not talking about FedEx, But the United States Postal Service, I'm letting you know there's going to be some more aggressive changes happening. Those are for those folks. I mean, my mom works, or I shouldn't say no. She works for the post office, and there's a lot of stuff that's been happening. But the article comes from Best Life, bestlife.com or org, wherever it may be. And the headline reads, USPS, United States Postal Service, will make more aggressive changes to your mail, Postmaster General says. So what does that mean? Well, it means these few things. First thing, these problems with it is saying here. So basically these problems of what's going to be changing are largely the result of the U.S. Postal Service sinking under the weight of major financial issues that have been growing over the past few years, were only exacerbated by COVID and the pandemic. The crisis is so dire that the agency released a 10-year plan called the Delivering for America, which that was happening around the time the pandemic, in the Service Reform Act to provide nearly $50 billion in relief to the USPS over the next decade. So they're sinking when it comes to the money. So what does that mean for us? First thing, UPS has already made some changes to how, or the United States Postal Service has already made changes to your mail this year. One of those things being that back in April, they introduced two new shipping surcharges. So that basically means we're going to be paying more for a lot of stuff for non-standard packages. This also followed another price hike soon after, where the agency's first class mail prices went up by 6.5% by July 10th, as well as their frame rates of delivery has been a bit slow, but they're hiking up prices. As well as they're planning on making more aggressive price raises, stating that by this past January that they've also increased the shipping prices by around 3.1%. Again, these percentages, even though some of them may be small, you get to see the effect slowly over time and how that plays. But ultimately, there's more on this here. But ultimately, right now, just let you know, if you're starting to see some of the prices are more expensive to ship out on stuff using the United States Postal Service, just know it's to balance out the financial crisis and issues that they're having right now, to be able to put more money back into it. Because there's always going to be a need for mail, as well as especially domestic, until they find a way to curve all of this, that it works more efficiently, or hopefully they don't start laying people off, or wherever the means may end up being. They're always going to still need to get mail and information sent out to people, so it's always going to be there, but we just don't know for how long. But yeah, with that, y'all, again, if you want to know more about this, the article comes from Best Life, and the title reads, USPS will make more aggressive changes to your mail, Postmaster General says. And speaking of prices and things and stuff, it says Amazon is going to take over. They've also went up when it comes to their prices, not only the shipping, but when you're buying certain products. So again, talk about inflation and all that's happening in this particular case for this next article, and I'm going to get right back to you. This is talking about how, I don't know for y'all, but out here, gas has finally started to go back down. Not even right now to say to a reasonable price, but it's going back down. And that's what this article here is talking about when it comes to gas prices. So this article comes from Chino Enterprise Record. And the headline reads, gas prices dropping, drivers cutting back. Boom. 3 paragraphs and we out. So, article reads, gas prices, and this is in Chino, this is for us California, Chino, have dropped 8 weeks in a row as drivers cut back on gas use. And I got something to say after this, and y'all can think with me on it and say your thoughts as well. But gas price aggregators, GasBuddy.com, reported that the prices nationwide have dropped below an average of $3.99 per gallon on Tuesday, while prices in Chino averaged $5.17. I see in here you said $4.99 is what you got right now. For us, it's like $5.09 right now, at least here in the LA area. Since gas prices have risen, Dow said she had to reduce commuting to Chino down to 2 days per week, scheduling all of her shifts in 12-hour days. So people have been having to change up their scheduling due to all of this driving, which it really makes sense. Budgeting, cost of living, inflation, money changing situation, all of that together. The price in Chino are coming down after a peak average of $6.32 a gallon. We was almost hitting $7 over here back in June. But it's unknown whether the gas prices will continue to drop or stay the same. But demand is driving prices down. But as the war in Ukraine is still affecting supply, the demand for gas increase can happen again, and it may increase. Because again, gas reserves and gas situations in Ukraine and other different places are having an effect on how much gas we have in those resources, even though we can tap into some other reserves that we have, but ultimately, if we don't need to, we can save it. But yeah, y'all. This is an article for all the gas folks and everybody wondering how much, when, where, whatever, how much gas is going on. This was real quick and real brief, but if you want to know more, again, this comes from Chino Enterprise Record, and the headline read, "Gas prices dropping, drivers cutting back." Now, before we transition to the next topic, my thought on this too, when it comes to a lot of these cutbacks, not only because of the cost of living is so high, and this is again my thoughts, and y'all can add your thoughts as well too, is that as well as we're moving when it comes to technology and society pushing forward, all the other alternatives that we're looking at, especially there was a bill that was just signed, or I'm incorrect, you don't quote me on this, but literally it was in the news about that they literally put money towards more EV, which is electrical vehicle options. So there is going to be a lot more of those stations for electrical vehicles, as well as there's going to be a high demand for a lot of that to start coming. So funding is going to be going towards that way. So don't be surprised that a lot of it's hiking up, because there is a slow transition over for folks to get electrical vehicles, which again, more eco-friendly, as well as, less money and harsh resources on these fossil fuels that we have. But that's part of the reason why I'm thinking too, people are also cutting back, is now people are starting to get used to not only relying on needing to get just natural gas, but if you can get to your job and it's a certain mileage for you to go, you might bike, or you might just ask job if you can do a certain change on your schedule, whatever it may end up being. But part of that is too because society's moving forward. A lot of the resources that we've used in the past is starting to become less and less needed, and more eco-friendly options are happening. So that's at least my thoughts on it. If y'all want thoughts, y'all say that too. Mars is one of them. They've been working on that too. They're trying to go everywhere. What's going on, Wolfpack Workers? Good to see you in here. Peace and love. Welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays. We back again. Yes, but we just finished up on the news. So again, thank y'all for being in here. Y'all could be anywhere else. I appreciate the love. Thank y'all for the support and being here. So before we get into the next topic, I have to get a disclaimer again, and I appreciate it. So when it comes to coming on to for the topics and talking, just know that you waive your right to, again, be on and put in different places, because these do go up on Instagram and they also stay up on YouTube. So if you want to see and have yourself on here and you don't mind them being on those different platforms, then please come ahead and join. If not, it's okay. You can stay in the comments and add your commentary and perspectives from the comments. But again, if you can, please come in and join. This is not only just for me to talk to y'all as a figurehead back and forth, but also just to get a conversation and reasonings going along with us as the community to build. So I appreciate if you come through. If not, it's all good and well. Now with that, let's jump into the next topic, which the next topic we're going to be talking about individualism versus collectivism. And I've been wanting to talk about this. In past shows, we've touched on the concepts of individualism and collectivism, but that was it. We didn't go too much further into why, how, all the more deep details of it. Yes, I got you the Webster Dictionary definitions. I got you. We're going to define these mugs. But I'm glad that this has been brought up now, because I really want to talk about this and get into the differences. And again, we can talk about where we see this in different societies, whether this is a Western, Eastern, wherever else you want to describe it. I think it's important that we speak on this, because then the topic to follow after it loops right back into the whole conversation. So, as that's going on, in the comments right now, y'all, let me know, when you hear individualism, what is a word, a phrase, or the first thought that comes to mind? Put that in the comments. In the same token, when you hear the word collectivism, what's a word, thought, phrase that comes to mind? Also put that down in the comments. Let me give y'all a few seconds before I do that, and then also read these definitions. Shouts out to Crisss, aka Alien Space Queen, for, of course, the Webster's Dictionary definitions and getting it all in there and set. So, appreciate you, fam. Thank you. We got singularity, meaning single. One. I feel it. If y'all got more, please keep putting them. But as that's going, I'm going to read off these definitions. So, first one, we got individualism. And it's a noun. We have two different definitions with sub-definitions. So, the first one for individualism is, one, a doctrine that the interests of the individual are or ought to be ethically paramount. Also, conduct is a conduct guided by such a doctrine. Other part of that is the conception that all values, rights, and duties originate in individuals. The sub to that, a theory maintaining the political and economic independence of the individual and stressing individual initiative, action, and interest. Also meaning that conduct or practice guided by this theory as well. Second definitions, individuality as well as an individual peculiarity. That's individualism as a whole. That it ought to be about the individual, and to be ethically, that's paramount. It's the individual. And I see in there another one on community. Yes. Now, switching to that definition for collectivism, we have two of them. The first one being a political or economic theory advocating collective control, especially over production and distribution. Another one about a system marked by such control, where it's collectively from either community, people within groups, but the whole, we collect this as we have this all together as a resource, versus I have it exclusively as a resource. Second definition, the emphasis on collective rather than individual action or identity. So again, identifying as a collective versus, oh, I'm just me, I'm the individual. So the idea of, is all me, or there's something that's greater than myself that I'm a part of. But those are the definitions. Thank y'all for adding those and your thoughts in there as well too. So we're speaking on that. What do you want to talk about? What do I want to speak on? Where are you going to even go with you talking about individualism versus collectivism? And shouts out to Kundan. I see you in here, Kundan. Peace and one love. Welcome back for What's the Word Wednesday. It's good to see you up in here. But let's see. All right, look it. We're gonna already get this. Before I even jumped in, you finished the news? Yes, I did. I just finished the news, so we're already getting into this right now. How you gonna have a dark screen on me? All right, there we go. No, you good.
Is it
You're good.
dark?
You're
The sun is
good.
setting.
But good to see you. What's going on, Crisss? What's the
What's
word?
up? The
Approve.
aliens. The aliens
Yes. But
approve.
thank you for popping in.
Yeah, no notes. Yeah, no worries. Notes called me out yesterday. He called me and he was like, "We haven't seen you in forever. Where you been?" I was like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
here.
Oh yeah, and shouts out real quick.
I'm
Shouts out to
around."
the brother T Lucas in the building. Another dope individual in MC. Yes, I'm
Hey, T.
rocking the shirt
Lucas.
right now. MC squared right now with all of this on here, man. So shouts out if y'all want to check out T Lucas. Check out T Lucas everywhere. Yes, all the
Oh,
merch,
he's
man.
got
As
the
well as let me
merch.
shout out the other brother Kid Abstract and
The
also
merch.
the group Raw Rhythm, aka Revolutionary Rhythm. Also got their hat on, man. Gotta support. Love the brothers, man. Gotta support them. But good to see y'all up in here. But again. All right, Crisss. So how you been? What's been good before we jump into this topic then?
I'm good. I am on my
What's
way,
good,
well,
George?
a month away from
Oh, so y'all
moving to the
finally
East Coast.
chose. Oh,
Well, we
I
did
didn't
in
know. You
January.
still use
Yeah, I know because I've been underground and I've been making moves, planning and plotting. Yeah, so next month I
Oh
should be in
shoot.
Maryland,
The DMV. Oh
the
shoot, T Lucas is in
DMV.
the
Yeah,
DMV. We got more DMV reps up in here. All right.
hey, Maryland, here I come.
But that's I'm glad to hear of
That's
that
about
move,
it.
and hopefully it's to help with whatever you got going on.
I don't know. I'm scared now because of like what's going on in the world. Like New York is doing all of these like drills and like the news media is like leaking out information they're not supposed to. It's just like, oh snap! I go to the East Coast just to be like ground zero.
Mm,
I'm like, I'm terrified. But anyways, other than that, no, it's great. Things are coming together. But I'm really excited about tonight's topic because before you even like gave the
yeah.
definitions, when I was like reading yesterday, like your flyer, I was like, oh snap! What comes to my mind is that
Please
episode of
explain.
Rick and Morty with with what was her name?
Mm,
Unity. There we go. When he was dating Unity and like he wanted her to be like an individual with him because he's like the rickest Rick of them all, and she's like, but that's not like my purpose and that's not like my destiny is to like
yeah.
be an entity that like basically consumes and unifies people. Now it's kind of that's kind of terrifying. Like I understand it, but it also gets scary because of the way it's like the way they unify is like they don't have like individual
Mm,
consciousness, but they're all working towards like the same like it's she's taking over everybody. Like so they don't have independent like thought. There is no
oh,
singular like self. So I was just like yeah, so I was just thinking and then that's the conflict because then you have like the more she's hanging out with like Rick, the more like she loses control of these people she's taken over, and then they have a glimpse of
yeah.
being their individual selves again, and how they paint how terrible that is because then they start a whole like race war against like the different nipple types, which is
Mm,
extreme, but but it's just like that's what happens. I don't know, so it just like leaves you in like, or at least me, in a stalemate of like which one is like the better choice because
yeah.
there's extremes on both ends. You know what I mean? So that was like my thought when I was reading your flyer. I was like, oh
Yes.
snap.
Again, and I know. Shouts out to Kundan. Kundan was saying like, "Yo, we've already talked about this before. Like, we had it in a different show." I'm like, and I was like, "No, not officially. What's happened is a lot of the things that we talk about. Some of it does stem from this
Mm-hmm.
whole situation of brother being individualistic or being very, collectivistic when it comes to not only
Mm-hmm.
just your thought and thinking, but reform laws." All of those sorts and how we approach problems and situations,
All of it.
and it just happens to weave so you know seamlessly through a lot of things because it's a piece of the puzzle to that stuff. But yeah, let's see. Kundi wanted to know what drills were you speaking about, the New York ones?
Oh, well, it's like these were
Okay.
military drills. So they weren't like directly like so I get like all my like I get my news from TikTok because everybody's panicking. I love it. I mean, I don't love the panic, but I love the like, no filter of like everybody is just like, the information, the mass information. But basically, some audios were leaked of some military personnel calling their
Mm.
families like to check on them in the most abstract way, and they were like playing these calls, and they're like checking in and asking questions in an abstract way, and that's obviously panicking their family members, like what's going on, and they're like, we can't tell you,
Mm.
but just want to make sure like you're okay, because they're like doing these like drills at night too, and they're not allowed to see, so they have like night vision goggles, and it's just like something with weaponry. I know my roommate's sister is
Yeah.
out in Louisiana, and they're doing stuff with weaponry. She's in the military, so it's just like it's heightened.
Mm.
So, but something got like leaked on the news in New York where the government had to step in and cover it up. So that's how whenever they have to cover it up, it's like, oh shit, something was said
Yep.
that was real. Because what did they have to gain from like a local news station? But the fact that you have like the government's like, oh wait, so what you heard was actually not, and it's like,
Yes.
y'all left this
Well,
out there.
thank you
So
for
that
fleshing that out or
that's what
giving
that was.
more context around it. Again, see, T said the Tower of Babel was a collective too. We gotta just be careful who you follow or following. True. No, definitely true. And we're gonna get into that. And again, for any of y'all, if y'all wanna come on, again, that's I know
But
it's
how
hard.
do you know?
So for y'all wanna come on again and y'all
Yeah.
want to share your perspectives, please. If not, you can keep adding them in the comments. I appreciate y'all for that. And we also got another that said, I was just telling a friend yesterday that although the U.S. seems hyper individualistic, it is also very conformist. Interesting. Another said that I think that's
Oh, most
because only a
definitely.
tiny percentage are seen as actual individuals and human. Hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I was just talking about it kind of ties into this conversation I was having with my friend Kat just a minute ago about like so we talk about like neurodivergence and like autism and things like that, and how like people are
Yes.
treated by ableists out here in the country, and how as much as we're always like standing up like be yourself, be you, it's okay, don't ever be like ashamed and all that stuff, but the consensus, like the general consensus, especially
Yeah.
like in workplaces and stuff like that, are to conform to ableist
Hmm.
behavior. So it's kind of interesting. It's like that whole like saying one thing and acting another. So it's like, how do you find that balance, and where is the balance, or does the balance
Yes.
even exist right now?
And part of the conformity too has to do with, and I see it in the sense of depending on how you want to look at it, is
Mm-hmm.
it's part of those, the rules, regulations, and stuff within the group and how that's set. So y'all might be collectively working towards a goal, but for
Mm-hmm.
to be able to working towards a goal, you have to be in these particular standards for that to end up happening. you know, I mean, that's what I'm at least seeing and breaking it down. But we gonna talk more and talk this all out. So we is good. You see, it said even with that tiny percentage who are seen as human are not actually allowed to stray too far from this narrow definition of being human. Now, yeah.
Yeah, you can't go off script. That's why a lot of white people glitch when you ask them certain things, like certain abstract questions. Like they kind of glitch, and it's like, oh, you're going off script. I don't have a response, pre-made response for this, and now you're making
Yes.
me think. Now I'm frustrated.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
it's all over the place.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
this is a good
let's go
topic.
ahead and then let's try to get this down into, okay, then, not saying which is the better side, but let's really delve into figuring out, okay, is it individualism, is it collectivism, and then now we have a third contender came out of nowhere, conformist, being conforming to these certain things. But let's just get into the individual and the collective. What do we know about individualism from the start?
So, what lens are we looking
I
at
would
it
say in
from, though?
Go ahead.
Because like you can, like, I've been deep on like
Hmm.
my spiritual journey, right? And that's an
Yes.
individual journey, and you may be able to find a community or a collective that you can share in your beliefs, but the
Yes.
experience and the path you go down, um that is a very
Yes.
individualistic road, um
What's going
so
on?
hey, Note.
Sincerely knows the truth
So
in the
that's
building.
no. So that's what I think of
Okay.
when I think
Yes.
individualism. Because I know I don't want to. I'm not jumping because I'm not gonna go there. But like your second half of this is like selfishness, and so like there's a slight difference between selfishness and
Yes.
individualist, because they don't necessarily, they're not the same thing. You know what I mean? Because it's an attitude
Mm.
and a connotation.
Double dipping.
Um,
It's all good. It's all good. Again, that's why these topics. No, that's why these topics are paired so well
sorry,
together.
because the way you do it,
If
yeah,
y'all
I
don't
know.
know,
I'm
if
not
y'all
new
don't
here. I know
know,
how you
now you
do it.
know.
Now you know. And damn it, no. Sorry.
Of course.
Sorry.
Of course. Of
I just felt
course.
it. I just felt
Um.
it.
But okay, in your aspect, that's always going to happen. I can't live a collective life. I can't jump in between people. It's not like a video game where I can switch from me playing my player
Mhm.
then jump to your player to another player. So on that aspect is knowing
Mhm.
the the difference of where we're looking at like individualism versus collectivism. It has to do with the whole as a society,
Mhm.
because that's what again civilizations base that off of
Right.
to see where we were going and progressing, whether or not if we were or we were regressing. So in the
Right.
sense of what we see as a society, so as a society, as a wherever we are we individual in our thoughts
Mhm.
and our behaviors and what we profess to believe and know, or are we a lot more at least collectivist and more collected when it comes to what we see and what we want to push forward with? And what I mean by that, as in
Okay.
there's
Mhm. Mhm.
less is more. So for me, when I see collectivism, I see less is
Mhm.
more. We may know about all these different things, but we know, okay, if this is the common goal, we taking this particular route. So when we know we're on code for this, we're on code for this. Versus individual, we look at it as in I have to get my particular perspective. I have to get all my needs and stuff met before I can do anything else. And at the end of the day, I want to benefit. I'm not really worried so much about the community benefiting. I'm trying to benefit.
I think like last year or something, we had like a group
Mm-hmm.
conversation, just like me and you, about this when I was asking questions about the different. I was like really like is individualism like such a bad thing? I think is what I asked you when we were thinking about it.
Which I would say this,
So
shouts
to
out to you.
answer
Shouts out to you for that, because then
the
that's
question,
what made me prompt to think about making this, but I moved it again. It was further down the line of all of the list I had. So just know that this one also is a shout out to you on that.
the aliens approve. Okay, so now that I got that out of my system, so you look at just like our society. Let's just like let me. It's so much to chew. Okay, so let me just from my timeline of understanding. So we're always told
Yeah.
like in American history, like I'm only gonna go as far as like the 1900s, okay? Because I don't want to. We're not going that far. 1900s. We've had this sense of
Mm-hmm.
collective thinking, you know, with us going into the first war and then us going into the second war. It became this like camaraderie of like we're great, we're this, and it became so that was like a collective like
Yeah.
hive mind like thinking, you know what I mean, which is why we're experiencing like fallout now. I would say yes, as a society we are moving towards we're moving on that scale
Yeah.
towards the individual. A lot of people are understanding like at what cost is it to
Yeah.
stay with the collective,
Yeah.
at what cost.
The
You
pros
know,
and
they're
cons.
starting to do the
Mm-hmm.
risk analysis. Yeah, risk analysis. So I'd say currently we are moving towards, but have we hit complete
Mm. Mm-mm.
individualism? No. But when you compare. We started all
Mm-hmm.
together, unified, right? But at the same time, like Kundan mentioned, to the standards of who fits in to that collective.
Yes.
So, and then you see
Enoch.
people on the outside who are
Yeah.
not accepted in this collective, who are not accepted in the collective, but still adapting and
Yes.
taking on the mindset of that collective. Sorry,
No, you're good.
I'm thinking it through. Sorry. So like when you just like see that, I would say we're starting to see like in real time like the
Mm-hmm.
strong cons of being too deep
Hmm.
into a collective. So as a society, are we? Which one are we? I think we're still finding our groove. We're not one or the other. We are just going back and forth between, because now we're like circling back. Like everybody wants like the whole oh make America great again. It was like trying to go
Yes.
back to a collective mind. It was like let's go back and just be unified, even though not everybody will be accepted in this whatever like world we're
Yeah.
trying to
Okay.
like create. But you need to still adapt this mindset, even if we don't acknowledge
Yes.
you. Everyone needs to have this mindset, and this is the way it's gonna be.
Again, yeah. No, no, that's
Sorry, that
no,
was a
that's
lot.
great because again, you pushed on a lot of points that's where we're trying to get to the crux of the situation of whether individualism and collectivism, and knowing those again, it's the pros and cons, like you're
Mm,
speaking on, of really what works and what hasn't been working. And a part of it too is, I think, like you were speaking on, or
right,
if yeah, I know T Lucas said it earlier, is about watching who you're who you're following, who's your leaders, and what are their intentions and really their purposes and an agenda behind a lot of this stuff. Is it really to connect, which in the word you have
right,
collect, which is collectively, like to come together, or is it to again be on that extreme side, and it more so starts to look more like all these different groups, whether if they're like KKK, BML, all these other groups, or white nationalists, all these groups. And is it that type
right,
of collectivism that you want to look forward to, or is it more in a sense of
right,
towards one common goal that not only benefits you but benefits the group, and honestly benefits humanity as a whole, is where I see that more so. But
right.
as we continue to dig in, let me get to these comments because y'all are going in. I appreciate y'all. So again, we have a comment that says, but looking at the formal dictionary definition, both individualism and collectivism are defined very narrowly in political economics in terms such as control and means of production. I know. I mean, and that's mostly when you think of a
Mm-hmm,
society, we're going to think in those terms, especially now. If we were thinking back way when, if we're talking about
mm-hmm,
political, what do you think about political in a particular sense? It was more thinking about economic, because we know that for a thriving economy or a thriving civilization to happen, there has to be some form of commerce, whether if back then it was bartering, the food system, all of that stuff. So that in a particular case, were we going to help everybody, or am I going to keep all the crops to myself in that particular case of, and then producing this stuff so that is everybody going to get an even spread, or am I going to be able to have 3,000 stocks of corn and maybe give out 100 so then everybody else can divvy that up? Another comment says the movie Wag the Dog explains the state of things currently. I need to look into that. The masses believe they have generally freedom, but collectively we all are subtly controlled to watch the same things, do the same things. Yes.
Yep.
Another
That
one.
is what's happening. Yep. Well, it
Exactly.
never
I think
stops
that's
happening.
a part
But yeah.
of the
Yeah.
system that we're in, which I'm going
Yeah.
to touch on a point with this whole topic with the system that we're in, especially in the U.S. Next one, it says, I see American individualism more like separatism than true care for the individual. And a part of that too is because I remember we did a show about American values, and sometimes I still get stumped on what are American values besides like trying to be free, like you said earlier. And that can end up seeing like, okay, in that particular freedom, if some people don't want to be free, then now that means, all right, there's going to be a us versus them situation. And that's what usually goes down with a lot of this stuff. If you don't believe, especially now, PC culture, being politically correct, all this other stuff, if you're not
Oh
with
my
me,
God.
you are against
Getting
me.
canceled.
So
Then
a
you're
lot of that
against
too breaks
me.
down to the fabric of really, is it the individual that we're really looking at, and is that beneficial, or is it a collective thought that also can be plaguing the whole that needs to be addressed? But let's see. Let's continue. Things and listening to the same music in general, it's easier to control a population subtly than by force. So mostly, I would say we're collectively controlled with a fallacy of freedom. Speaking truth, my brother.
Yeah.
This is a dope convo. Just know all y'all can come in and join the convo as well too. We're not the only ones. I appreciate y'all again. I know I said the disclaimer earlier. This will be on YouTube and Instagram, but again, if you're not comfortable, you can stay in the comments. But yeah, please, the more the merrier, the more thought and explanation is put together. Man, shouts out to everybody's coming through. Moxilla, the brother here's Johnny, all of y'all in here, man. Thank y'all for this, man. Should Wag the Dog is one of the shoes on power lines, right? Y'all going in. But let's get into this then. All right. So when I think about it, Chris, when we're talking about the differences in how, either if it's managing, and look at how you did a span from the 1900s until now, from the perspective you added.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with what Kundan has when it comes to us having a specific form of individualism with Americanism in this particular case, because of our culture and our values and how that adds up. That what's happening is we're speaking up for ourselves, but also trying to speak up for different, either marginalized or different groups, but to a point where, to me, what I see, what's happening, and again, it's a beautiful thing because we're questioning things, and that's what needs to be done for, again, to see if a system is truly working in our favor or helping us out, or if it's doing the opposite, which most of us can say it's doing, the opposite, especially of what you can see right now. This pandemic has definitely bust wide open in front of y'all how the system really does work and how dysfunctional it is on purpose. But yes, the smoke has
Yeah,
cleared.
the smoke
Hopefully
is
for
cleared.
y'all seen the
Most
smoke
of.
has cleared when it comes to that. And what ends up happening now is, I definitely would say that it is a lot more individualistic here, due to the fact that because of all these fights that we are fighting for, which, hey, is going
Hey,
on, Kundan? What's the word? Hey,
what's the word?
Kundan.
Yeah, so I was looking up the movie Wag the Dog, and it is the way I remember it because I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is the one with the shoes on power lines, which, if you watch the movie, is a good metaphor for. Actually, the whole movie is a good metaphor for this conversation that we're talking about, and the subjects that we're talking about, because it's the irony is that a lot of people here in this country show their individualism, ironically, by buying an iPhone or wearing a MAGA hat, right, or wearing a certain brand name T-shirt or shoes like Nike shoes. To me, it's so ironic, right? They're showing that they're an individual, but buying into a collective.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because
Huh?
we're all hipsters.
Yeah.
We're all hipsters. We're all hipsters.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
also, if you
yes.
criticize, the iPhone to an iPhone user versus an Android to an Android user, the Android user will actually be opening to listening to you, be like, yeah, that. So there's some functions here that kind of sucks. But the iPhone user will just flip out usually, because there's so much more program.
Heck yeah. I love my Pro Max.
This is behind the
Heck
brand. I think it's
yeah.
behind that.
My light's not
Yeah,
on, but
it's
you gotta see
behind.
this
It's behind the
camera.
branding and what
There's a
you
lot
get
of
yourself
programming
into.
in the
Yes,
branding. That's the
yes.
irony. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Oh man. Well, yeah.
yeah.
So in this particular case, what I'm also wanting to add into the convo with the individualism, what I'm seeing is also the concept of the more and more that we try to stretch ourselves in identifying among array of so many different categories and different boxes that we put ourselves in, the further we get away from what are we doing as a society, as a collective, to address this problem, to come around. For a lot of people talk about world hunger, which right now some people actually don't know, not only Africa but China and also us. If y'all notice, sometimes y'all go to the market, we're in a food crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
We've been in a food crisis for the
We
past
are.
2 years. Like,
It's
it hasn't really
ridiculous.
shown so much, but you can go to places around, honestly, midweek, and
Eggs are six
bruh, who are you
dollars.
saying? I think meat went up like 10 to almost 20%. That's why it's so expensive, especially for those, again, who do get meat. If not, you saving
There's
some
also
money
been
not
like
worrying about
food
it.
deserts for years. Even before
I
the
gotta get
pandemic, there's been what they call food deserts,
Yes.
where there are some people where you have to
Mm-hmm.
go a long way to get to a place where you can even buy the food, and often a lot of people can't afford to go there because they don't have cars and public transportation is very difficult. There's not
Yes.
enough proper public transportation either. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up as well too, to note that, yes, when it comes to stuff like that and having those resources and not being able to even get to them at times too, it
Mhm.
just makes it harder and harder for, again, where are we actively pinpointing the need for stuff. Because we again, for me, I see the concept of this
Mm-hmm.
being so individualistic on a lot of things. We're spreading ourselves so thin that when we really have to fight for a cause to help out
Mm-hmm.
in whatever realm it is, we can't really step our foot in it because we playing the hokey pokey, or we playing, in this particular case, you're thinking of Twister. You got your hand over on blue,
Mm-hmm.
you got your feet in green, got
Right.
one in yellow, and over. So you stretched out like this, and for you to have your full attention in one place is hard, because if you leave that space, again, some people will have that intent that, okay, see, now you're leaving, now that means you weren't really even for the cause. So that
The
means you
door is
weren't meant
closed
to.
on
You
you.
weren't really
Yeah.
there, invested in the first
Yeah.
place. But of course, there's a lot of things that we shoulder and carry when it comes to your experience as your own individual. But when that comes together within a group, there's of course a lot of identities that we're gonna balance and have. But where we find not only the similarities and what's common, that it helps us to propel and remind ourselves, like, oh yeah, even though as a black man, black woman, person of color, however you want to put it, on the diaspora, the POC, however you want to, all of that stuff, we're here for this. We're here to support each other with this, and knowing when we do this for ourselves, it ultimately has an impact on all these other realms in these areas. I'm not gonna say I know the solutions.
Right.
I'm just saying it starts to show me more and more clearer as we focus on one thing. We start to not only learn what works here can actually have an ultimate effect on all the 15, 20 other things that we've had lined up as well too. It's like we jump into one project, but then only do it like 25% and try to jump to the next project. But this is, again, this is me looking at the cons when it comes to like individualistic approach on certain stuff. Is that, well, you got to come help me now, but what about me? I got to do this too. So what about them? What about us? That's just, again, my spiel real quick on it.
Remember the old saying, you can't help
Yourself.
anyone else until you help yourself?
Yes.
That's very
Right.
important when it comes to like those kind of situations, like, the different groups and communities that, need specific attention and care. And although they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
linked and have similarities, we gotta like find a way to help ourselves so that we can come up with the
Yes.
solutions and be well enough on all levels of
Yes.
wellness, all levels of wellness, to then extend out and help others. I strongly believe in that. I don't know if that's me being on the individualist side, but like
And I
that's
will
my
say this.
perspective,
Go ahead.
because you can't help someone, you know what I mean? If I'm over here, like you said, we're juggling all these different things,
Yeah.
your twister analogy, if you're spread out, what
Mm-hmm.
what use are you really?
Yeah.
You know what
And
I mean?
and that's where, and it's just like outside of both the individual and collectivism, but it still connects. That's where you spoke on it, and it's just how this is how life and systems do work. There's always going to be that balance. As much as we want to say we lean more towards this way or we're completely this particular way, just know that there's always going to be a way that is going to show up and balance itself out, regardless. So when we think of this whole idea, I think of another setup of, there's different diagrams that you can look into, but there's areas where there's different circles, and outside that circle is another circle, and the circle outside of there that goes from here and then goes to here. And that's how I think of when it comes to individualism versus collectivism. Is there has to be that approach, which shouts out again Jordan Peterson. There's also, it's in different hip hop songs and things of the stuff, is like, start with cleaning your room. That growth starts with you. It starts at the micro. And from the micro, you're going to have an impact on the macro, which is the community. Once you get your stuff together and your neighbor sees that you got your stuff together, then the neighbor's going to be like, you know what about me? Do I got my stuff together? Is there some things that I can look into and things of that sort? And if you're willing to extend your hand out to the neighbor and maybe support in a certain way, then the neighbor's got their stuff together. Then the next neighbor sees it, and before you know it, it's a whole community effort. Again, move towards a goal to not only better oneself, but to also better the community as a whole. So how I see it is, we have to start off, again, helping ourselves, and it can be look like it's individualistic, but in a sense, technically how I see it, it's not. That's the start of how a collectivist, at least for me, um identity looks, is that I'm able to handle my part. So when I come together with a group, I played my part, and I will continue playing my part because this is what we're working towards together. When you think about it from an individual side, is I'm playing my part because I just want to play my part so I can get what I need out of this situation. So give me my slice of the pie. I see y'all next Thursday, and we can do that same thing. Just give me my slice. I don't want to stay for the meeting. Versus you worked on that for yourself, and now that you've worked on it for yourself, you can come and collaborate with other folks who's worked on themselves to be able to, like, all right, then what is this situation that we need to face together? So for me, how I see it is, it's going to be a combination of both, but it's going to start, that's just honestly my philosophy on a lot of stuff. It starts with knowledge of self and building from within. And once you get that down, then you'll be able to be an asset to helping others figure that out for themselves and model it, and then y'all can collectively start to attack or go over different problems and issues and address them as accordingly. If you want to, again, it comes also with that, do you even really want to do this in the first place? Do you just want to do for self, or do you want to do for others through service?
Yeah, like for me, like the discrepancy that I'm seeing, right, at least in the U.S. and in the West as a whole, is that we have this battle between individualism and collectivism. But the irony is there is no real collective or community.
I feel that.
Because if you look at the roots, the history of these two as a political ideology, they're both ironically colonial ideas, right? So individualism is an offshoot of capitalism,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
ironically
Yes.
never
Yes.
respected the
Right.
individual. It literally saw human beings as robots.
Yes.
Because remember, originally they had slaves, and when they could no longer do slavery, they had to figure out another way of getting human robots until they could create actual robots, which, by the way, they're starting to do, right?
Yes.
To replace the humans with, yeah.
Oh, they're
So,
here.
yeah, we already
Yeah.
have, cashless cashiers and all of that. I mean, cashless, cashier machines and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that on the one hand. But on the other hand, if you look at collectivism, it's an offshoot of Marxism, right? Including communism, socialism, and all of that. And I know that in the American left, especially in the far left,
Okay.
it's very popular nowadays. But I grew up in a Marxist dictatorship, so for me it means something else. But as I studied the history, I noticed, oh, wait a minute, Marx himself was actually very sexist as well as anti-indigenous and anti-individual into an extreme level, right? Like explicitly anti-indigenous. Whereas with capitalism, it's not explicitly anti-indigenous.
Yeah.
It is only anti-indigenous if it's gonna like interfere with profit. Then they don't care. Then they don't care. But not as an ideology. It's not anti-indigenous. But Marxism, including collectivism, is as an ideology itself. They're very anti-indigenous, meaning they're actually very anti-community. Because remember, the indigenous ways are about real community, right?
Yeah.
This is today where something happened to my phone. But can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
I can
You
hear
just
you.
frozen.
You're just frozen. I'm
Yeah, you
chilling.
Okay.
would.
Okay,
You
sorry.
would.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone's a black screen now, but that's fine. Yeah. At least I can hear all of you. Yeah,
If you want
I
to
guess
jump back
Instagram
in,
doesn't like it when we talk about these things. Yeah, I'll
yeah.
jump back in. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
It
Man,
doesn't.
see, it wants to do all of that. But yes, I like, again, and I'm glad. I'm also, again, I keep on saying I'm glad, but y'all should know that's one of my phrases as well too. Well, Kundan brought up that point of capitalism, which I was going to end up saying that to me, that's what sparks a lot of this individualism too, is because being your own entrepreneur, being your own boss and things of that sort goes in line with capitalism, because you can make more and profit more from the individual versus then a whole group. If I can split up that family and also have the
Right.
mom, the dad, the kids, the cousins, the aunties and uncles all paying for different Spotify premiums or for Netflix accounts versus all one family account, I'm gonna go for that in some way, shape, or form. That's more money for
Right.
me, more ways for me to be able to do that.
Right.
And again, a lot of this stuff, again, the English language and what we come to know and stuff, all of this has been created by those who have dominated and, again, have colonized all of this and influenced this. So we're
Influence.
just working with the tongue in that particular case and what we got, which,
What we
again, I
got.
always appreciate the perspective to bring that and wrap that right back around, because yeah, these concepts are new. They just been remixed, or in this particular case been plagiarized without any given context back to where it originates from. That's why you have to go and do your knowledge, do your history on where this is all from. But the whole idea of, that's why it's such an airy thing, as Kundan was saying, because technically you it's hard to be a full community because of the fact that not everybody's going to be on the same page. So it's always going to have that, again, that individual when it comes to our thoughts, our minds, and our consciousness, but also as individual because of the fact that I'm in this body, I'm having this experience. But it's the whole idea too, if you,
Right.
again, if you subscribe to religion or any type of philosophy beyond that, there's
Right.
always going to be a common goal. And for us, of course, the short common goals, besides if we agree with this or disagree anything else, is for us, again, to prepare the next generation, birth the next generation, raise up the next generation so that the human species can continue on, again, from a biological
Hello.
standpoint and from the nature standpoint. But, and as Kundan is coming back in, it is, to me, I've seen it's more advantageous to work towards something greater than yourselves with more people versus I'm going to do this on my own. Because just like this, like
Right.
I'm grateful for this because of the fact that, again, I could be talking about what I talk about and it could just be me on the screen and nobody's responding back or saying anything. And I wouldn't be able to get a lot more thought and flesh out other ideas because of the fact that I have y'all coming in and sharing y'all perspectives, which prompts me to think about other examples and other things. So when it comes to stuff in that particular realm, to me, this is where you can practice an idea of being a part of a collective or a part of a group in a sense, because you, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where you can also start to learn how to spot out those who have the intention to do great or to do right by the group versus those that I'm just trying to make either a quick profit or I'm using this so that I can show my power in my status. And it goes around. That's why we have to have our
Mm-hmm.
morals, our values, our ethics and principles, and stand by those and be able to weed those folks out who try to fake it but didn't make it.
Right. So, let me
Mm-hmm.
finish my thought. Right. So I was saying, so the reason why I mentioned the ideological history is because instead of a real collective or community, what we have instead are systems of control. Right. And in some ways, these systems of control are oppressive, but in reality, the oppression isn't really the point. It's just one of the tools of control,
Yes.
and there is a real fear of losing
Mm-hmm.
that control, right? So the way,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a codependent or interdependent, it's not even interdependent, actually it's a codependent relationship between these systems and the
Mm.
individual, right? So the way I'm seeing it work is that there are these systems of control, and within these systems there are
Yes.
institutions that perpetuate these systems, right? There's the educational institutions like universities and colleges and high schools, right? There is the legal institutions like the
Mm-hmm.
courts and uh, and then the legislative bodies like Congress and Senate, right? And then there are policing institutions, there are medical institutions like hospitals and insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
But like these institutions in turn are not happening in a vacuum. Individuals run these institutions, right?
Yes.
Both in terms of leading, but also in terms of just operating, right? Because there are leaders and then there are those who obey orders who are literally operating
Yeah.
these institutions, right? So basically, there is individuals perpetuate these institutions and the institutions in turn perpetuate the system, right? But why do these individuals perpetuate the system? Because the system rewards them for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So so as far as like even like what we were discussing earlier about how to make change or call out culture and things like that, I now that I see this dynamic of like, oh, this individual is not their behavior, whether they're being bigoted or whatever, right? They're not doing this behavior in a vacuum. They're doing it because the entire system rewards them for perpetuation
Hmm. Well, as that's going on, that makes sense
of the entire
because,
system,
again, what is
right?
that when it comes to jobs and the certain roles in the jobs? Literally,
Mm-hmm.
you get paid to play that
Yep.
particular role, or that certain amount for it, as well as when you do what you're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
you can either have an opportunity to get a raise, as well as you're going to take on more responsibility and you're going to have to do things that may go against some of your values, your principles, and your morals if you, again, want to sustain yourself. And that could mean you have to go against the group or others that you end up working with. So it makes it, again, I get it. It's definitely something very true.
Or yourself
And
sometimes.
it's in this Pandora's box big conundrum of life is, if I can be, how can I be, collectivist in thought but also I have to look out for myself. But then if I can't look out for myself, how can I form up for the group? So I have to look out for myself, but then that means I might have to end up going against the group so that I can be able to look out for myself. But does that mean I'm for the group? You see that loop?
Yep. It's
Yes.
like a begs the question.
Yeah. So nowadays I always think about, okay, like how does the way I respond to this particular individual actually help in
Mm.
changing the system? I don't care about calling out the person anymore, not even about changing their mind. I don't even care about that anymore. What I do nowadays is if I see something bigoted or problematic, I just take a screenshot and I don't even talk to that person
Yeah.
anymore. I just block them. I take a screenshot and I post that comment in a separate comment, and then I put my own rebuttal in a whole
Yeah.
separate thread, because what I find is that for every person who is saying that, there is like 1,000 others.
I do the very same things. And I think it's just because it's outside.
They're not saying it. Oh, there's an airplane on top.
You back?
Come in. But yeah. Oh yeah. So I was saying I would just take a screenshot and put my rebuttal in a separate comment in that thread, and I wouldn't even speak to that person, because for me it's not about the person. The person is, even though they think they're being original, they're just saying the same thing that I've
Yeah.
heard a million times before. So for me it's more about rebuttal of the point itself rather than changing that person's mind, because I want other people who are watching to see the rebuttal, to see that
Yeah.
there's a different point of view besides the one that they're saying. So that's how I do it. For me, it's more about, okay, how does this impact more people rather than trying to change this one person's mind, because that's exhausting. And
Right.
I don't play that game
Right.
anymore. Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
that's not always people's purposes is to play the game and to do that, because what ends up happening is that's a roadblock
Mm-hmm.
to what the true purpose behind a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that is a distraction. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
day in and day out, what we're trying to figure out is truly what's our purpose and what's our part to be played when it comes to the overall existence here. And it's really up to you of how it's gonna go about. We're all gonna have a different route of how that looks, but ultimately, like I think it was Lewis C. Carroll had a quote, and always is a quote I always remember is even if you don't know where you're going,
Right.
any road will get you there. And even though we all are traveling down our own path and our own routes, if we're thinking about, okay, as I go down this route and go down this route, go down this route, ultimately, a lot of these routes are going to all come back in some way, shape, or form towards whatever we might move it for. Say we all collectively want to start, quote unquote, a LLC or a nonprofit that targets, different needs and different issues in the world. Say we do all three different ones.
Hmm.
Who knows? Ultimately, down the line, when we get down there, even though we all have three separate LLCs, we can collaborate on, okay, if you have something for food, I have something talking about shelter, and another one is providing resources for a community. We can all pull our resources into each other and be able to work on those lines. Like, again, that's just an example. But
Right.
Yeah, there's actually a famous Toni Morrison quote in which she basically says that the true purpose of racism is distraction, because somebody says that you don't have any kingdoms, so you dredge up the history and
mm,
archaeological evidence. Somebody says that your skull isn't shaped right, so you try to debunk that, but there'll always be something else.
yes,
There'll always be one more thing that you have to keep debunking, and it's exhausting. In fact, it's exhausting on purpose, because they're just trying to derail you by, it's a
yes.
war of attrition where there's always one more thing to keep just getting you exhausted, just fighting against it rather than building
Yes,
yourself up.
because that is the ultimate thing. Is you build yourself up, then you're able to have those resources
Yeah.
to create
Mm-hmm.
your own foundation, your own building of whatever that is. Like that's why we have
Mm-hmm.
different books. We have cult classics of movies that speak on stuff like it, whether if it's 1984,
Mm-hmm.
whether if it's They Live, and a lot of these different movies that talk about stuff like this. It's like if we it 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 serves the purpose of the system, especially in the U.S. where we in, to have a very less educated population, because the more or less educated,
Oh yeah, half the populations reach at a sixth grade level or below.
because No Child Left Behind, right?
And the question is why? It's on purpose. Yeah, yeah. No doubt.
2003.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
And California, which is supposedly progressive, is actually among the lowest literacy
I'm
rates in the
looking.
entire
Oh,
nation.
shouts out to that. I'm actually
Yeah.
back in the schools,
Yeah,
and that's what we working on right now.
yeah.
So literally,
Oh,
that's
Mm,
nice.
I'm
that's
That's
good.
grateful.
good.
Found a situation and work it out. We can talk about this later.
Hmm.
You're a great teacher. You have the
Yeah.
analogies for days. My right hand felt blue. My left hand felt
If
yellow.
you wanna say my analogies on point, look, I've pulled from so many different people, and I will
They
say this:
are.
after not only
Yeah.
my uncle and a lot of people who were my guides started putting game to me about how to look
Mhm.
at stuff, and then I started to plug them in. It made sense, as well as I also have to give my
Mhm.
kudos and respects also to Kundan, because of the fact that the whole idea of not only storytelling and being able to weave the truth
Mhm.
within that storytelling. I try to do that with the analogy, especially for people, so they can understand it and find it through a story, because ultimately, again,
Mhm.
the whole entertainment piece, which goes into a lot of this stuff too, when you are able to entertain a populace, entertain a person, whether if it's an idea, concept, or marketing, like we see every single day things are marketed to us. You're able to
Yeah.
push a product across, whether if it's going to be a product for yourself, or it might be something that will help you identify with a group, which earlier you talked about having like a product, you want a BMW or any of all these different status symbols. Which does it help in that particular sense to be collective, or is it still flaunting your needs to be an individual, because of the fact that now I have a higher,
Mhm.
that's why we have, again, and that's why all these isms that we have create so much division and so many
Yeah.
distractions, to a point that's why it makes it harder for, again,
Right.
I do agree with Kundan. I am still a firm standard on the ideal. So I'm very idealistic when it comes to collectivism, because I know how powerful it can be when we come together as a collective. But
Mhm.
realistically, you can tell as a society not only is not educated, but also everyone has and starts to want just their own interest and does not want it to put into the pot. Unity becomes more or I mean less and less realistic, because of the fact that we have conformity,
Mhm.
we have the separatism, we have the complacency, and whether than some people, and you have generations prior
Right.
who are like, I'm done. My fight has already been
Right.
done. Why do I need to add more to this? It's your turn
That's the
to go
complacency.
about doing
Yep.
this. Can I just live?
Yep.
And I understand that, but it gets harder. It gets harder and harder again for that to be reality. But
Mhm.
I see the fruits.
Especially as things are getting backwards now with like the overturning of Roe versus Wade and all the other
Yeah.
Supreme Court decisions that happened in June, and the upcoming one in October with the Moore versus Harper, which could threaten our voting rights and could even spell the end of democracy as we know it. Uh, which, by the way, I'm going to plug myself. I'm going to be giving a workshop at the B&B Studios at Brianna's Hollywood
Mm,
Studio here in Orange on understanding these Supreme Court decisions on September 4th at I think 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Yeah, we'll make an announcement. And because it's not about the money, but to make sure people get at
yes.
least committed to coming, there's like a minimum $5 donation that I ask. It also pays for my Uber ride, things like that. But for me, it's more about, like you said, community
Yeah.
organizing because there is so much ignorance around. Like when I did my book club last month, there was this guy
Yeah.
who came He didn't even, not only did he not know that Roe versus Wade has been overturned, he didn't even know that was a thing, that there's such a law
Yeah,
called Roe versus Wade that protects women's rights to abortion. Like, he didn't
yeah,
even know that was even a thing. So I'm like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, but now I need to step it up and be explicitly, teach people, about all of these decisions, how they're tied together, how they're interconnected, because as you know, Instagram is a very bad place for education where, they banned Dr. Martin Luther King's own words on his own birthday, Malcolm X's own words on his own birthday.
mm-hmm,
So the censorship's ridiculous here. So we need to, I feel like, we need to organize outside, offline, which is why I'm doing this in person. Like, basically, you could call it a class, workshop, whatever, but it's super focused on the Supreme Court decisions that happened in
mm,
June and the one that's going to happen in October.
mm,
Yeah, because we really need to organize
yes.
around it. Yeah.
And I'm literally shout out to Neely Fuller Jr., as well as it's been spoken about by um, Dr. Francis Press Welsling. But for you to really understand and understand a lot of this stuff and be able to not only identify it, but be able to forecast what can happen in the future. And not only to say we try to do preventative stuff, because a lot of this stuff now is hard to prevent. There's a
Mm-hmm.
concept called the 9 areas of human activity that Neely Fuller talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these levels or these areas of activity, if you start to notice changes in them, you'll start to see why laws, why rules, why the fabric of different things happen, whether if it's the status quo, whether if, again, an inflation, gas, prices of milk, eggs,
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff happens, is because in one of those areas, there's something that's influencing and a needing of that change. So there has to be some type of correction, just like if it was stocks. So in the case, the 9 areas that Neely Fuller has on here, in it as follows. The first one is economics. Ran economically revolutionary. Second one is education. We was already speaking on that. The third one is entertainment. You see that in the news, media, all of that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one is labor. The fifth one is law.
Mm-hmm.
The sixth one, politics. The seventh one, religion. And the eighth one, sex. And then the last one, which is war or even counter war. And in all of those
Mm.
areas, if you look at it, not only from a logical standpoint, but you take your time we can do our if thens, your possibilities, and you really mull it over, you'll start to see, okay, now I really understand as a whole. We're not gonna go super individual,
Mm.
individualistic, because there's some, again, there we can get to the roots, but definitely we want to at least have an overall basis. But you get to an overall look and be like, okay, now I know why they really overturned Roe versus Wade. It's not only not on that situation because they don't necessarily want you to have, or women to have, the choice over to be able to control and have that on their body.
Oh, yeah, it's not
Yeah,
even about that. Mm-hmm.
We know
but
why.
again,
We know
Yeah.
why.
It's about the 13th Amendment, which I'll get into on that day. Which, even though the overturning was based on the 14th Amendment, the real reason is about perpetuating the 13th Amendment on a bigger
mm,
scale.
and shouts
Yeah,
out to my cousin that's in the building right now. Prolific Hands in the building. Good to
yeah.
see you, cuzzo. Answer your phone. I want to talk to you. So answer your phone, cuzzo. Yes, I know I'm putting my cousin
Dang,
on
put
blast.
him
I
on
got you. That's what we
blast.
be doing. But much love, cuzzo. Good to see you up in here. Yeah, that's then that. But see, that's where, and you said it, is that's why we're here to also help inform and to bring people up to speed of what's going on, so that you can know, well, yes, you can also be a part of this fight in this particular way. I'm not saying you have to go back to college, university, any of this stuff and study all these things, but I can provide this resource to help you at least get an understanding. So then now you know, okay, what part am I going to play? If you never knew about Roe versus Wade, or you never knew
Right.
about what was going on with what's happening over in China, or happening over in Africa and other different places of the world, because that's what I will say too. And on top of the individualism versus the collectivism, there's another mindset that goes along with that, versus a local mindset versus a global mindset. And that and
Mhm.
that's
Oh
and
yeah.
that's where,
Mhm. Mhm.
again, I know it gets hard, because then you're like, okay, well, if we're thinking global,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
very American centric
yeah,
versus
yeah, but
global
I mean, in
mindset.
your
Yeah.
head, you're kind of like, well, that's also a contradiction, because what happens if we start thinking global? Like, now we're over here thinking about this and that and that. Aren't we also getting fully stressed around? Like, I mean, in a sense, yes, but I'm not saying, okay, now you need to go talk about that stuff, but it will make
Yeah.
sense if you're like, oh, they're having that same
If you
particular
knew.
problem going on over
Yeah.
there. We're not the only ones dealing with this too. Okay, what are they doing over there that actually is working for them and that's not working for them? So it's
Exactly.
a whole sense of, again, coming together to see what works and finding solutions. And in a sense, again, and this is where, yes, I'm knocking the individualism, but at the same time, all of these parts are needed. It's just learning how to let you balance these and let them, again,
Balance them.
coexist together as one. Another
Yeah.
knock that I give individualism is because of the fact that it's more so geared towards just you. So you're only looking for something of a solution fit for you. That's it. And
Right.
when it comes to a collectivist idea, is thinking about multiple solutions and multiple options. Because again, we're not going to go with that. If it's only just about you, there's no one size fits all. We try to think that there's a one size fits all for everything. We try to think there's a unisex for all these
Right.
issues and problems, but I'm literally trying to, and you got the hair in front of you, and it's all good. Um,
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out, then, okay, well, since I'm thinking about it only for myself in this case, then that's all that is going to work for. When we're trying to look for more solutions, again, we always want to go through a problem based, but we need to look more and focus on solution based stuff, which includes prevention
Solution.
versus always wanting to get into a crisis. And then it's like, what are we going to end up doing? It should have been
Right.
what we should have been done
Man.
beforehand.
That's why I wanted
Right.
to include More versus Harper, which is
Right.
Yes.
happening in October. It's happening in 2 months. Of course, since this is going to be a Supreme Court case, there's not much we can do to actually prevent it, but we can organize around it and try to minimize any impact
Yes.
and prepare for it, right? Including organizing for, since the November election are also coming up, organizing for the right candidates to be elected, making sure
Already?
we have a real majority in the Senate, instead of this ridiculous 50-50 with Kamala Harris as a
Yes.
Right.
tiebreaker, right? We need a real majority in the Senate,
Mm.
things like that. So yeah, but there are a few things we can organize around it to minimize the impact of
Yes.
that could happen. Yeah.
And this is a question at least posed, and to figure out how we can get around what we spoke about earlier, which is the complacency factor, and we speak about it a lot.
Mm,
What,
Mhm.
how
right.
can we?
Yeah.
And it's very not gonna say is very sad, but it just makes it very daunting. It's very daunting
It is.
to think about, of, okay, how are we gonna really motivate people to care? And a lot of
Mm,
that comes to figuring out, okay, what are people's interests and what are they really looking into, and
Mhm.
how do we conjure up energy for folks to be able to want to go out and do these things? And I will say, at least for a solution based type
mm,
thing, and y'all can also chime in with it, one of the things
Mhm.
is giving back people their time. And I know
mm,
if we give people more of their time to enjoy or find joy within life, there will be more susceptible to hear people out and listen, because of the fact that they're not anxious over having to pay this bill. They're not anxious over, now I have to do more of this at the job, versus literally, I'm there 24/7 just because I have to make it by, aka job standing for just over broke. And if I don't continue to go, how am I going to survive? How am my family going to survive? Nobody outside is going to want to help me with this stuff. So I got to be able to do this on our own for me and for my family. And that becomes, again, more and more difficult to pull those folks to want to advocate and be able to want to bring things like this to, the awareness piece. I'm not saying, again, everybody and their mama has to come out and start, being activists and doing all that they can, but in your own way, you're actively pursuing that, but through your own lens. Because again, I am all for people playing their roles and being able to help and support. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's funny you say that because I noticed this interesting stat uh, where there are actually now more jobs available than there are. Uh, Even though we're in the recession, it's a very weird phenomenon now where there are actually more jobs available than there is, there are, than there are businesses, right? Where basically where, and one of the reasons is because of the pandemic and the lockdown that happened in 2020. One, yes, the stimulus package helped a little bit, but also just being forced to like stay within
Yeah.
yourself in your own solitude, force people to really have time to think for themselves finally and really feel their feelings. So once the job started coming back and people just didn't want to go back to those shitty
What's up,
jobs anymore.
James?
They were like, they're like, no, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
especially for that money. No, and that's why now,
Deeper than that,
yeah.
the smoke
Oh, yeah.
cleared during that time too.
Mm,
So for the people who went back, i.e., me, saw this firsthand,
mm,
the level of like apathy and
mm,
upper management and the way they just like there was a shift for the rules. Like
mm,
pre pandemic structure rules, this is how you do the job. After, I don't care, I don't know, the chaos, the
mm,
disorganization, the disrespect, the ableism, all of that started presenting
Yeah.
itself in full effect, and people started to see, I don't have to take this anymore. I'd rather go find some other route than put up with this.
mm,
Because if you're not even following the rules that are supposed to, quote unquote,
Yeah.
protect me, protect the worker, you know what I mean? If we're not following those rules, if HR isn't, if I go and complain to HR and they're not doing anything about it, and I'm just going to be here getting abused, why would I put
Mm,
myself in that situation? So people started finding other ways. So, yeah, there's a ton of jobs, but the people are weighing their options.
mm-hmm.
Like you said, they're waking up.
mm.
Because I mean, it's either continue to sleep and be engulfed in this American dream, or you're going to live out your dream and be awake for that. You got to capture it
Got to
while it's
capture
gone and
while it's
before
gone,
it's gone,
before it's
because
gone.
again, those moments like that, they're hard to
Yeah.
come by, as well as they're going to pass. And if you don't take those opportunities to have that growth, then it's
Yeah,
not.
they are.
It's. I'm not gonna say that the universe and life and experience will give you an opportunity to do it again, but it may not be in the same capacity that you could have got it
Hmm.
if you went the first time. And it
Right,
happens. We're human. Things happen. That
right.
switches and changes, but you got to be open to those opportunities to happen, even if it is uncomfortable. But that's again where I say, how do we go about addressing that complacency and that ideal too of conforming to something that's a comfortable option versus challenging yourself to grow?
So when it comes to yourself, I think that's where like the whole idea of like your path, knowing yourself, how we talk about like those taking those steps help the overall
Yeah.
collective along with yourself. But if you're talking about helping other people who are stuck in the complacency mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that one is a challenge, because if someone is not motivated, and because I see a lot of apathy
Yeah.
around me, just where I am, just the environment, like in general, where I'm at. And it is one of those things I'm like, well, you can try your best to like try to motivate them, but if someone truly does not
Yeah.
want that for themselves, I don't think it's a lost cause, but I think you've got to really come up with a plan and think it like all the way through, because then you're exuding your energy, you know, and your wellness to try to
Once.
save someone who
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to be saved. You know what I mean? So that one is a tough one when it comes, especially when it comes to complacency. Like, no, I'm good where I'm at. No, I don't have to do
Yeah.
anything else. No, I'm good. Like, that's like digging heels in, like rooted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
Yes.
that one's a
And
challenge.
that's where I'm just putting it out there because again, like I said, there's always going to be that give and push when it comes out of that happening. So I'm not expecting everyone to go or to be able to want to, grow and improve, or they just want to sit there and chill, and that's fine. But it's being able to have those solutions or put some of those solutions in play to help, again,
Mm-hmm.
weed out, as well as to identify those individuals who are showing some type of interest, but they just need that extra push, and to know that,
Mm.
okay, I
Got
kind of
yeah.
saw that, me maybe
Mm-hmm.
sitting on this couch and just continuing to complain about this stuff, but I saw how you talked about we can come together as a community, maybe even through just having weekly, conversations and talks at the local gym. And we also have, communion through,
Mm-hmm.
food and everything else. I think I could get about on that and actually start to learn, from you or and learn from us to see that, you know what? Now I see that we actually might have this same goal in common, or I've been dealing with this same issue here, and you
Mm-hmm.
just showed me another strategy. You know what? I'm gonna go back and share that too. And it's a part of being able to. And it's that's why I said, to me, I didn't, like I said, I didn't want to say like I said, sad early, but daunting, because of the fact that it's almost as we have to go back and go back into that inner space of the child where we think of in our mind, and we have to be able to grab that inner child in the person and to be like, yo, this is going to be beneficial for you in some way, shape, or form. You want it. You're here. There's a reason why you're here, and we have your attention. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Take that hold and grab it. But there's, again, statistics can be disproven, but at the same time, if we get a certain overturn of a percent of a population wanting something, that supply and the demand is going to have to meet that change. So we already see it now. A lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
I've started to see it, is that there's a lot more options for organic fruits, vegetables, and all these other different stuffs in the market. And I'm starting to notice a lot of that's being bought, and all the other GMO and other type of products are just sitting there. And a lot of these companies are starting to notice that, okay, they're not wanting to go for a lot of this stuff no more. Okay, so why don't we might as well start shifting here, maybe change the formula here and there, and then see what happens, even though we know some of that stuff, if it's, shouts out to you again, Kundan, and also the brother, I think is Reagan, or what's it, Dr. Reagan, his last name, which is for the book of that book of how,
Oh,
yes,
Ragan
Chatterjee,
Chatterjee,
about
right?
how
Yeah.
to, get rid of or cure disease, and how do you, and
How to end
yes,
the race disease?
talking about, if you
Yeah.
see more than
Yeah.
five products or items behind what's in the nutrition facts, that, yes, in the
In the
ingredients,
ingredients,
yeah, there's an
yeah,
issue
yeah,
there. So even if they're doing all of that, it's not
exactly.
necessarily.
I love how he simplifies
So,
everything, yeah,
and I
in that
and I
book.
know,
Yeah,
and along
yeah.
with that, us keeping things simple helps people who simply know simple stuff
Mm-hmm.
be able to be on board. So that is either in
Right,
your
exactly,
speech,
yeah.
in the way that you present it, visuals, ideas, and examples. If they're so simple that you can show elementary child on how to do it, then you'll be able to explain it also to an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as far as the complacency, I think there are two
Mm,
levels to it, right? Where I think there are two types
Mm.
of people. There are people who are complacent about their complacency, and those are the types of people you cannot really help. But then there are people who are
Yeah.
complacent, but they know they're complacent, and they
Mm.
want to change. They're like they have some complacent patterns, including some self sabotage patterns in certain areas of their life, and they're sick and tired of being complacent. They
yeah,
don't want it anymore.
yeah,
They're willing to change. Those are the types of people that you can actually, impact and affect
Mm.
change. But the other type of people who don't care, like who are complacent about being complacent or are not even aware
yes,
that they're being complacent, those are the type of people you cannot really, there's nothing you can do about
yes.
them. No.
And that's a part of
Mm.
the game to be able to find that in and work around it. And slowly but surely, if
Yeah.
that's your part, you're calling to do so, you're going to go about doing that. And again, that's where you start to find your collective of people that are on that like-minded, your soul, your flame twin, all these other different ways you could talk about how, you resonate with the person and the people
Mm.
around you. That's how you can get a lot more done and accomplished. So for me, when I think about, again, individualism versus collectivism, for me, with the idea, the thought, the lofty idea and thought of collectivism, a long time down the road is
Mm.
more effective than the individualistic approach after you've done your own work first. I'd rather have four
Mhm.
to five helpers, workers, builders to build a house versus just one. Because it adds
Right.
more stress to that one person to try to be the jack or all the trades versus everyone else that they also have a lot of those skills, but they're in certain areas that each one
Mhm.
can specialize in so that we can divvy time for that person to work on this, that person to work on that, to work on this, that the efficiency goes up, the effectiveness is up, as well as it makes the time less. So I see it in that way. So
Yep.
ultimately for me, because then I want to make sure we get to
Agreed.
enough for the last topic and we can go back and forth in between because again, that's just how I set these up. We know this by now. Um, but ultimately with at least individualism and collectivism, it's really how we can pull those folks in to clearly understand what's the purpose, who's behind that purpose, how are we going about to affect that purpose, and what are the means that we're going to do so to do that, so we can ultimately see, is it going to be for us as the group, just for the person, or also for us as a whole
Mhm.
species as one. But yeah, I don't know. Y'all want to add some more of the thoughts on that with it.
In time.
But Lavina, good to see you in here, poet. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Much love to you as well. Appreciate it. But yes, I I
I'm
know
ready to
you
get to
are. I
that
know you
second
are. So
part and
do you
answer your
two have any other
question.
follow
I
ups? Any
think,
other follow ups with at least putting this piece?
well, I think
Kundan.
the thing I'm about to say actually ties into the second part
Okay.
about the selfishness, right? Because I
Mhm.
think I've explained how the colonial history of how both individualism and collectivism
Yes.
have colonial roots. But conversely, as an indigenous person trying to decolonize and reconnect, for me, it's more about uh, evolving from independence to codependence to interdependence and seeing like,
Mm.
oh, we gotta really like, instead of pretending that we're separate and
Yeah.
superior to nature, we gotta really learn from nature because we are nature too, and see like how is nature really seamlessly, right, bringing together the individual and the collective in this
Yes.
interdependent way where each like each tree that you see is not a single tree, it's actually interconnected through the
Mm-hmm.
mycelium network, the
Mm-hmm.
fungi network actually
The
is interconnected
fungi.
with every other tree worldwide. Like, it's literally like in reality, like on the larger level, it's one organism. So, and that's just one example of interdependence. But like to me, one of the most beautiful examples of both inner and
Yes.
outer interdependence is the Native American indigenous farming technique known as the Three Sisters, uh, which is they grow, I think they grow the corn, the bean, and the
Yes.
squash together, and they all have a symbiotic relationship with each other. But the funny thing is, when they prepare the food, they're also cooked together and prepared together. And what they found out recently is that even in the microbiome in the stomach, they coexist beautifully because I think the corn provides the starch, the beans
Mm,
provide the protein, and then the squash provides the
yes.
vitamins and minerals. So like it's a beautiful like nutritious interdependent thing inside our bodies as well. So there's mutual like the way it's growing outside is interdependent the way they have a
Yeah.
symbiotic relationship with each other. But even in the way the food is prepared and the way we're eating it, so thousands they've been growing this like this for thousands of years. They figured this out, right? So we just have to decolonize and like and really reconnect to our own each individual like
Yes.
indigenous roots, which has very like common these very common ideas of interdependence. But I was really like amazed to find out that with the Three Sisters technique where how oh my god it's not just in the outer but also in the inner is literally
Yes.
symbiotic and interdependent. It's amazing.
Mm. And with that thought, because it goes into this, we're going to move into the last topic for tonight, y'all. And the last topic, which I know Crisss has been waiting for, and all y'all on Instagram and YouTube, watch it later, may have been waiting for, because you're like, okay, I'm about to dip out, is we're going to talk about, is selfishness a virus affecting the community? So we got in and we talked about individualism and collectivism, our thoughts, the origins of some places or where it truly spans from, and the ideology behind these and how it can affect on the individual level as well as the whole group level. Is selfishness hindering the growth in community, as well as what does selfishness indicate and tell us when it comes to a person?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to look up the definition on Merriam-Webster
Okay.
of selfishness because I think there is a difference between
Okay. I will
individualism
keep
and
them up.
selfishness. Like I stated earlier, it's more of a kind of it's more of
Yeah,
a
because
connotation and an
selfishness can
attitude
be
and
negative or positive depending on how you look at it.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
But most times it's perceived in a negative.
right,
That's the
exactly.
perception.
It's perceived as
People
negative. Yeah.
perceive
Yes.
it as negative. And from that negative stance, my answer is yes, because it is solely about one person's like their thrive, their willpower, what they want, their needs. It has nothing to do at all with the community at all. They do the things not to help themselves, to help the community. They do it for themselves solely. That's the sole purpose is
Hmm.
for themselves. But I will
I
have
got
you
you.
read
And
the
we're going to go back and
definition.
forth in between them. And love your thought. So, first one, selfishness, the quality or state of being selfish. So, I also put up selfish. We can look at it in a second. A concern for one's welfare or advantage at the expense of or in disregard of others. Here's another key word: excessive interest in oneself. And that is selfishness. Now, selfish,
Mm-hmm.
it says, first one, concerned excessively or exclusively with oneself, seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage pleasure, or well-being without regard for others. There's more that keeps doing the same thing, so I'm not going to read the rest of them.
So those all sound on the, like, all those definitions lean more on the negative aspect, because we're talking about advantages,
Yeah.
which means over another. An advantage
Yes.
is like a leg up over, right? The obsessiveness, so
Yes.
fixation on self, meaning no one else exists, you know. So those, so yeah, so I still stand with my answer, because it seems like from those definitions, it just is more on the negative side, and with that, you are going to get a lack of a regard for anybody else
Yes.
that's not
Which,
that person.
Yeah, it sounds like the part of the separatism that I was talking about earlier, where it's literally
Hmm.
uh, that you want to be separate from others, superior to others. Like you don't care about others. It's just the pure regard for yourself over
mm,
the community,
Someone else.
or even over
Yeah.
another individual. It's just all
yes.
Yeah.
about
And
you.
the keyword that I kept seeing
Yeah.
was excessive. Yes,
Obsessive.
excessive. It's not a
Yeah.
balance, because again, we talking about how we
Excessive
were talking
and
about earlier with a lot of this stuff is finding the balance.
Right, it's
It's
not balanced.
excessive.
It's
It's
excessive.
not. It's on the
so
other
it's on
side
the
on
other
purpose,
side.
because again, it's an extreme. Because again,
It's an
what
extreme.
we all like to do here is also try to flip the narrative of a lot of these words that already start off with a negative connotation. Like you speak on it, because
Negative connotation. Right. Like we said earlier, it could be positive, it could be negative.
yeah,
Well, if we go to the roots, it's
yes,
looking like it is solely negative. So it
Mhm.
must be this new age kind of thinking to say, oh, I could be selfish and not be,
mm-hmm,
bad or
Yeah,
whatever.
they're
But if we
trying to
go
change the
to the
meaning to
roots,
mean more like self-centered or
mm-hmm,
being in yourself. But that's more on the balance side. But the actual definition is more on the
yes,
excessive side.
yes,
it's on
because
Yeah.
exactly.
conceptually we know that we're going to be selfish at times. And a part of it is not only just on the fact that you're also trying to get a one up on somebody. It's more so it goes back to you're trying to protect yourself and your time, as well as you start to learn how valuable it is to build upon, something that ultimately can also help others all around you. So there's going to be some times where you're going to want to say no to products and things.
But
But
that's not
again, it
selfish,
is
though.
it is it is
See,
in
I
a
would
sense
argue that it's
because of the
not.
fact that you could be helping that person, but you decide to say no. So that in itself is also a selfish decision. Again, I'm using it in a technical terms, because when we think about it logically outside of this,
I
you'd be
hear
like,
you.
no, yeah, you're doing that because you're also looking towards the look at there's the immediate view of something and the overall view. The immediate view is, yes, that's a selfish decision because you should be helping people of service. But the overall view is, well, I'm doing this because honestly, I'm saving time. Because if not, I can have my anxiety go up because I'm already working on this project and that project. And ultimately, I want to bring these projects together to help the company or help whatever going on to get better. That's the overview.
I feel like there's like, I'm
What's
big on
going
like
on,
words
Queen?
because I'm such a literal person that I feel like there's another specific word for that
Mm,
is not selfish, because like the intent, like you can
yeah.
also look at the intention behind it too. The selfish intent is looking like it is like the that excessive like me focus. That's the intent. That's where it's coming from. So saying no, um, to spend some time on yourself so that you can come back and help somebody else. That's a different intention. So therefore, I feel like there's another word for
Yes,
that.
but see,
That's
the
not
thing is, we
selfish.
use, and this is where, we said earlier, the English language is so
Hmm.
tricky. This is an adjective. you can describe somebody's action as being selfish because of the fact that you decided to do this. I know what you're talking about. It's definitely a different word.
I feel like that's
It's
projecting.
definitely a different word, but I get to see again. Once you start
Yeah.
decoding these words, you can look the etymology,
Yeah.
and you start to let them play themselves out. You can see why some people will, go straight to saying that, using the word in the
Use the
context, and know
words
why
that
they're
they
using it in the
use.
context,
Yeah.
even though technically it isn't really meant to be that, but it's because of the fact that we're so used again to using the language that we do in that way, without, because there's always going to be that gray area, that in between. But that's why, again, the intentions and your purpose and what you want behind it start to, again, give your reasonings behind why you're making that decision and why you're going about doing what you're doing. Because again, if we just want to be straight cut, no emotions and straight right there, like, you're very selfish
Heck
because of
yeah.
the fact that you're supposed to stay that extra hour to help your coworker, not knowing that all, again,
No, you're not.
look,
The company don't want
no,
you to do
because
that.
look, some companies do want you to do that. Because guess what? If you on salary, it don't matter.
That's the waste.
Look,
That's the wasted labor
it's
hours right
look
there. They
it.
want you to
There's
get
some
out of
places,
there.
I'm telling you, that they would like to have you there all night if they could, if you're not doing the night shift. But again, I get you. There's definitely that in between. That's why a lot of stuff in
Yeah.
life, again, it's a combination of those myriad of sides. Like, we always look at it from the double side, the dualism, but
Right.
we know there's
Right.
multiple sides all on that spectrum, on that realm, in that cycle. That's why there's always that, okay, but nah, it doesn't necessarily sound like it, because it's not. Because ultimately, I'm there in that middle path with stuff. I like to see on both sides, because ultimately, or multiple sides, I should say. Shouts out the turntables, and you get to get the whole holistic. Shouts out again to Kundan too. Kundan has a whole, diagram and a whole setting around the whole thing of being the wholeness of certain things, and that's where we're always reaching back to find and get to. So yes, we can have it on this certain side, but it doesn't make sense in between this area, and there's another part on that side that doesn't make sense there. But when you start to see how both of them can converge together to have something different, like a Venn diagram, that in between surface, then it's like, yeah, that's where realistically we see a lot of those things working.
Yeah.
And also, I haven't looked up the etymology, but I'm guessing, like, if you look at a word like yellow and yellowish or green and greenish, right? I'm
Oh,
guessing
ish,
that
the ish. Okay.
selfish comes from the word selfish, like yellowish. So that's what I'm
So
guessing,
kind
right?
of self.
Yes.
So it's like kind
Yep.
of the self,
Kind of.
Look at
right?
y'all.
Kind of self, roughly the self. So, so again, it goes back to the self, where it's all about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's me, me, me. Like even if you break it down like that, like
Real quick, man, y'all are etymologists over
Selfish.
here, okay? Etymologists, okay? Look,
Likely self.
it's after a while, like, again, you start looking for these things, that it starts to make a lot more sense, because a lot of things are interconnected more than you think. As well, like when Kuni's talking about the example with the trees, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, we just complicate them so much that we miss out on all the interconnectedness of stuff. Is now we're just starting to get back to that and be like, yo, dang, since we have this issue about homelessness. Now, part of the reason about also with homelessness is because there's a poverty issue, and because of this poverty issue, that's why we also see why there's issues with schooling, and also issues with politics. They're starting to see, like, dang, this is all interconnected than we thought,
Connecting
stemming
the
from
dots.
one particular issue. And it's because we've always wanted to try to focus on the one thing, knowing
One
that, oh
issue.
shoot, ultimately it had ended up spanning back from this and created this whole situation that we just all like, okay, I'm gonna hold on to this branch, I'm gonna hold that branch, but ultimately be like, well, what about the root that was right back down right there that we was already been talking about? But we're just like, that's too much work to go and to be able to do that. Which I wanted to also read off one definition for virus, and to see if it coincides with what we're talking about as well too, and y'all can let me know or not, because there's multiple ones. I'm not gonna read all of them, but one of them that it popped up to me.
Or
Parasite could be another.
parasite. That one too. It
I
infects
say
and then
assist.
it
Look it for
takes
me. I
over.
broke down. I said the word system is assist in the stem.
Assist.
There's assist in the
Yeah.
stem.
Oh, look at
That is,
that.
again, we
Wordplay.
play with these words because these words are
We
real
play with
spells.
words.
These wars are out
Okay.
here. But yeah, one of
So,
the definitions for a virus, which is a
oh my
noun,
God.
so it means it's a thing. Yes, is something that
A thing.
poisons the mind or soul. And selfishness,
Mm.
that's something with often in the
Ain't
mind.
saying nothing about nobody. No,
Selfishness, that's a concept of thing that's within the mind, and it can affect the soul.
it is. It is.
So in that certain sense, when I saw the definition, it for sure is a virus because of
Mm-hmm.
that thought.
It resonated.
And look
Mm-hmm.
at from the heart of a poet,
Aw.
the heart and soul. Again, with all of this stuff. Shouts out to you. Thank you for being up in here. For what's the word? Much love. Appreciate you. Thank you. And that's where running all of this back together, when we're so focused on ourself, again, in that excessive amount,
Mm-hmm.
and not in the balanced, moderate amount, which I keep saying, and I want to keep iterating it because it's a natural process for us as beings to always come back to homeostasis. There's always a balanced temperature that our body needs. We
That
always
feels like
need a certain
thunder.
balance of
Mm-hmm.
water.
Mm-hmm.
All of these different things that even outside in the world, when one tree is gone, another one has a. There's always going to be that particular homeostasis that's there. So when it comes to these concepts and ideas that are just written and can't sometimes it's like interchangeable, can't be changed. There's always going to be that again. That's why I have those gray areas in between because that's just going how it's going to go. But with selfishness as the excessive amount, it for sure is creating
Mm-hmm.
that virus that then goes and influences a community. Look, I'll say this for example, and in the black community, if you're gonna get mad at me, get mad at me. I'm not even tripping, but this is what I see and experienced it.
It's heavy, and I'm
Look,
not mad at it.
the whole individual, you have to be able to do it on your own, get it on your own, and I have to empower myself. I could do it like this. It cuts out the whole idea of
Yep.
unity and a community and to commune.
Yep,
And
it
that
does.
type of thinking and that process, we're not talking about in a sense of being self-efficacy and efficacious, being able to do things on your own and have autonomy. No, we're talking about a mindset that's like, no, I'm self-made on my own. I did this all by myself, knowing that ultimately you ain't done that by yourself. Who birthed you? Who brought you into this world? Who brought you up?
Right.
We didn't come out as kids being able like, okay, now I was able to feed on my own. I was walking the streets. I was able to buy. No, we know unrealistically you've been brought up by a community in a village, and that's just how it goes. But it continues to move forth because of the fact that it blocks out the willingness to collaborate and the willingness to be able to work with other people when we're only thinking I'm gonna do this on my own. So even though you may have somebody who has a business and you want to support, but the way that you want to support is you want to copy or you want to have an idea of what they did and run with it on your side and maybe give credit back to them and be like, I got this idea because of you. But instead of funnel some more into that company, and you could probably even get a share, then to help even further that out even more, we always want to have something for ourselves versus being able to want to build. And that's one of the reasons why, too, I see in the black community, it's very hard to even think about unity as well as even in the family structure. Everybody wants to be split off and start trying to do their own thing. And that's where it's a detriment to ourselves. Yes, this can be seen in other communities, but
That's a pattern.
for my experience and me being black, quote unquote, melanated, whatever you want to call it, that's what I've seen. And that's where I can speak from experience and be an expert in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's also
That's
interesting that you
that
use the word
mindset was
virus,
sold
right?
to us.
Yes.
Uh,
Virus.
because I'm looking at the biological definition and also the computer program definition, and they're both kind of the same. The way they operate is ironically very selfish, right? Uh, because what it does is literally replicates itself inside the whole cell,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
but it replicates itself so much that it ends up deleting all this. Eventually, it ends up deleting all of the host's own cells, which destroys their host, which is why you die when there's too much of a virus, right? And then so it has to find another host. So the funny thing about that is it, it's beneficial to the virus to do that in the short
Yeah.
term, but in the long term, it's
Yes.
self-destructive. So selfishness is
Yes.
like that too. It's beneficial in the short term, but in the long term, selfishness is actually self-destructive, and a lot of people who are selfish don't realize
And I'm
this.
glad that you went and talked about that because I was something I was going to go and reach back to ultimately, but I'm so glad again, we be all on the same wavelength when it comes to just breaking and talking about this stuff because that's what ends up happening. You start seeing in the short term, oh yeah, now they're able to, have that autonomy already early on and be able to do that for themselves. But later on down the line, where's your family at? Where's that legacy that you wanted to leave behind? Where's that generational wealth that you were speaking on that you were trying to get to and have, and you're trying to do it on your own, not knowing that, yo, if we would have came together as a folks and as a people, yo, we would have had so much more than that.
Yeah.
What does it say? I know what's it called? The cheesy phrase of two heads are better than none is better than one is literally that whole concept is in like shoot, we go further when we go as a group rather than we go on that trek alone. Because that person, if we do again an analogy,
Mm-hmm.
if we go on a trek as a group and as more than one person, say that person gets pretty far, that maybe the person that's in the that's leading through all of that, and they decide, yo, okay, we got to this point here. For us to have a blueprint of this, can one of y'all head all the way back over there? So then when the next generation comes up, now we've gotten this far versus, okay, the one person just walks all the way there until, nothing happens. And because you don't know the day nor the hour or the time that you may transition on out of this world, nothing was left behind. There's no trace. So
Yeah.
going further with more folks.
In fact, if you look at the human body, we're actually only 10% human. A lot of people don't know this. We're actually literally 90% microbes and fungi and viruses and bacteria coexisting together. In fact, they found, in addition to the
Mm-hmm.
microbiome in the gut, which there's 60 trillion bacteria and fungi, and then they also
Yeah.
found a virus, which is like 6 times. There are like 360 trillion
Yes.
viruses, right, coexisting together. But they also found a second microbiome 7 years ago. This is a recent discovery. A
Hmm.
second one in the brain.
Yeah.
And in fact, I suspect there's probably a microbiome all over the body actually that they haven't discovered. Which is why we're actually 90%. Which is why another reason why we're actually only 10% human, right? So we're literally made out of creatures coexisting together, right? And so if it's like this
Yeah.
in our inner world, the outer world should reflect that, but it's not because we're so disconnected from the
Yes.
truth about nature.
Yes. And I mean, that begs the question, like you said earlier, which, I mean, what you just stated right now, then, what is human? Like, what do we identify as being human? And I mean, you can go and try to look for definitions and things of that sort. But when you think of the body in itself, it's a network of different organisms and things that are all together. We think of our veins, the neurons, the neurotransmitters, the gut, like you're saying, the gut, the pancreas, the liver, all this other different stuff. That wouldn't be like, oh, the liver is a human. Like, no, those are different parts. That's why they call parts and the systems in the body that all come together to create what we will call the human body or a genome. If you look up what a genome is, then you get to know that it is a composition of all the things together that come to create what we are right now. And the percentage breakdowns for all this stuff, like the more that you study in within yourself, a lot of this will continue to make sense. And when the more you study nature, the more you start to study you, because you are ultimately nature.
Yeah, that's why, like, So even that, right? Even nutrition science is very based on this machine supremacist idea, like where they still see bodies as machines, and when we eat, it's about adding more fuel to the body, like it's
Hmm.
a car, right? But
The powerhouse of the
Mitochondria.
cell. That's
yeah,
like the main
like
thing.
like the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, and all of that. But now with the emerging science of systems biology, which in the last 15 years, they're finally catching up with indigenous biology, right? Where now, as I learn more and more about it in the last 2 months, I see things very differently. Like literally see eating as feeding my microbiome, not only feeding my microbiome, but also diversifying it, adding more microbiomes, making sure there is a diversity of species in my gut, and then feeding that species. But so I'm very conscious about not only having a
Yeah.
so-called balanced diet, but I try to like eat a little bit different food every day to make sure that I'm feeding it a different, yeah, they get like different
Yes.
nutrients every day. That's how I think about it. It's about feeding my microbiome. It's not about um, filling up the
Yes.
tank of my car, of my body machine. So that's another way of decolonizing, because underneath individualism is actually, I would call it machinism or machine
Hmm.
supremacy, right? Because they only see us as machines or robots that are separate from each other that they can control. Because
Yes.
robots can be controlled, but biology
Yeah.
cannot be controlled because it's all
Why do you want
interconnected.
people? Why do you
Right?
think they want people to be sterile? Why do you want folks to get rid of a lot of this natural stuff?
Exactly.
Oh, that is
Why you think?
a
Why you
new
think a lot more
thing.
Hmm.
people
Yeah,
were
that
getting?
is
And
what's going on.
this is not a conspiracy theory, CDC or anybody and stuff.
Hence the
Okay,
Tuskegee
you
experiment, the
look
Guatemala
it.
experiment.
Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube, all y'all don't get on me. There are articles in the CDC. There's
You're
articles
gonna start
all over this
glitching.
together
Stop
that
it.
talk about this. But why do you think we have all of the hand sanitizer and
Mhm.
stuff, and then you start seeing more people and people are getting sick? It's because of the fact that,
Getting sick because you're not supposed to use it like that.
They're
Yeah,
destroying their
I've learned that
and
ecosystem.
in
again,
Yeah.
you'll be
seventh
like, well,
grade.
that's, common knowledge. But guess what? A lot of this knowledge is not common because it can be
It
changed and
wasn't.
reviewed
It's
wherever you
not.
That's
want.
what a lot of the antibiotics did. Actually, they destroyed our
Hmm.
ecosystem because they were
Yep.
giving people
Yes.
too much antibiotics, right? And then it became an arms race between their bacteria
Yep.
becoming more and more immune, and then the doctors have and the inventors having to create more and more harsh antibiotics. The same thing is happening with the virus as well. They keep having to come up with booster shots because that too is an arms race where the virus keeps getting immune to the new
Yeah.
drugs, and then they keep having to come up with stronger and stronger things. Whereas the new systems biology approach, right, which is also the indigenous biology approach, is more about it's the opposite. It's about probiotics. It's about feeding ourselves with more and more probiotics as well as
Mm-hmm.
prebiotics, which is the food for the
Mm-hmm.
probiotics. So it's the exact opposite of what the Western medical
And
system is doing.
emphatically,
And,
yeah. Yes,
Yogurt
I'm
and
glad you said that because
kombucha,
yeah,
kefir.
emphatically, we say it a lot. We
yeah,
say this emphatically. You are what
Yeah,
you eat, and
what
what you
you
put
eat.
into
hmm
that
Hmm.
microbiome with all those organisms is what you're going to get out of when it comes to the operations of your body. So you got to be able to treat all of yourself holistically with the right nutrition and the right fuel for all of this. But going back in into flipping it back into the topic because we're still in there. I guess unanimously we can say that selfishness, even in the sense of both logically, definition wise, is for sure a virus that affects community.
Oh yeah, it's a virus. Virus is a perfect term for it because it's an external force. It's not We're not inherently selfish, but it's an outcrop of systemic oppression. It's almost like colonial trauma response to being always oppressed, where to the point that
Yep.
we're like oh, the system keeps oppressing us, so we just have to keep looking out for ourselves to make sure that,
I gotta save myself.
yeah, I
Yep.
gotta save myself at
Yep.
least. That's what it is.
Yep.
It's a colonial trauma
And speaking
response.
again, since we did a breaking down again of words, of course, we keep on. I was gonna say I shouldn't have not forgot about the the suffix ness. Yeah,
Mm.
Nest.
well,
Oh,
nest
we didn't go
basically
into nest.
nest
You're right. You're right.
the suffix of nest from what I remember because I did it before on some things is close to basically meaning full of.
Oh, full of self. Full of kind of self. The ish.
And
Yeah.
let me make sure
Full of
All
that I'm
kind
self,
of
not
self.
rather.
misguiding
I
and
think it's
misleading y'all just because, but literally, let's see. It wants to, all right, now it wants to do some other, it wants to just say it's the end of a word. If it was why did it send me to suffix, not the meaning of suffix,
Nah.
the meaning of nest? But ultimately, that's
Ha.
how I look at it. It's full, it's basically nest being full of.
So the Loch Ness monster is
Got to
full of
figure
love.
out what that all is. It might be for some folks, it's BS. There is no Loch Ness monster. Then for other folks, we done seen it before. But, yeah, just, it's
No,
funny to
I'm
do that.
joking.
But ultimately, a lot of this stuff, again, when we complicate it, when you see something this, you'll be like, oh,
Mm,
dang, it was actually that. Oh, then, okay, why did we trip out so much about
oh.
this? Like we could have
Oh.
been handled this if we was like,
Mm,
this is where it goes. But that's where again we had to take that time and flip the whole idea of selfishness in a sense of being able to be
mm,
realistic with yourself. I'll just put it that way. Instead of
mm,
selfishness, being realistic with yourself,
mm,
you understand the ultimate goals is also to keep yourself in the game so that ultimately you can play your part to help others in the game as well. So you're going to say no to things. You're going to say yes to a lot of things. But your intention behind that yes and that no is not only that you can end up being to
yeah.
have advantage for yourself, but it's if I'm here for me, then that means I'm here for everyone else too. So if
Everybody.
I'm so selfish on that end of sense, nah,
Yeah.
like I'm going to no, none of this we talking about would apply to that person unless okay, am I getting paid to listen to all of y'all talking? Am I getting paid for my time to be here? It's not what was being said is so powerful that it can help build and open the minds for other folks to start even thinking and building on their own. It's just more so, okay, yeah, no, my time's been wasted, so let me get something out of this.
Right.
So is it a virus? Yes,
Everything is money based. Yeah, it is. Yes.
most
Most def.
definitely.
yeah.
With that, last thoughts. So for each one of y'all, last thoughts of anything before we close this out and we can be done for this episode. And I appreciate y'all so much. So who wants to go first with their last
I
thought?
think it's. I also want to point out about why is the virus, right? We didn't get too much into that, but I think one reason is the myth of meritocracy and then their constant push for that, right? Where
Mm,
they never they discourage community organizing by pushing meritocracy and being like, oh, if only you're not lazy or if only you're not stupid, if you just work smart and work hard, then then
Protestant
you'll
work
be successful like
ethic.
everybody else. You'll be right. The Protestant work ethic, all of that is basically gaslighting the population into that selfish and being like, oh yeah, if I just work hard and work smart and not care about anybody else, then
Right.
then I'll be successful, and that's all that matters. And these people who are poor and homeless, they're poor because they're not working hard, and they're homeless because they're drug addicts, which could be true for some of them, but for a
But
lot of
that's not
them,
the
they're
whole.
just like,
Yeah.
one paycheck. A lot of people are just one paycheck away from being homeless, right?
Yep.
So
Tell me
it's
about it.
that myth of meritocracy that's also like one of the underlying factors that make self-interest a virus. Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Malcolm Gladwell, by the way, literally wrote a book with that title, The Myth of Meritocracy, which I think is a
Yeah.
script original. So if you subscribe this script, you can get a 30-day free trial and you can listen to the whole book on the script site.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
I got my ways around to finagle some stuff. So if y'all want to be able to finagle some stuff for the for something else, I got you. I'm not gonna say it all here. You know,
What's up
finagle
a definition for that word,
is
finagle?
I'm gonna say another word, jerry rig. So there's another way around this stuff. Yes, I'm throwing words out there today. Yes, we throwing words out there. Break them down. Use your
You
Lex
really
files.
are.
Use all of that to figure it out.
You know what? Earlier today, you said, earlier today I was thinking, I was like, Mr. Chavez is like smiling from heaven, looking down at
Yes,
you. He's like,
buddy.
yes, Calvin. Yes, buddy.
Exactly.
Yes,
Oh man.
buddy.
Uh,
I'm proud of you.
words. But yes. All right. Back to it. And thank you for adding that, Kundan. I just knew like if we did that, we gonna keep going and going. I know for sure. Um, and it's probably gonna come up in a different topic, which you might be like, oh, this sounds similar. We already done this, but it's because so much stuff is so
They
connected.
always,
But
they
again,
always do.
final thoughts on just the showing overall from individualism, collectivism, selfishness, and even if it's a current event. Last thoughts. Who wants to go first?
So I'll go first because mine is short. Um, so from what I've gathered from this 2 hour discussion, um, individualism can be a stepping stone to collectivism if
Mm-hmm.
if used properly, if understood for said purpose. Um, I also think I strongly stand on there is that difference, the fundamental difference between
Mm-hmm.
individualism and selfishness. Two different things, but I can see how, with the way we use words and stuff, I can see how it
Yes.
could be used interchangeably. But since we've looked up said definitions, I do see them very separate. Um, so yeah, that's what I've gathered. That's my summary. Like the stepping stone. They don't. It doesn't have to be a versus. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be this or that. It could be
Mm.
this to get to that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Beautiful.
there we go.
Boom. We already putting that. Go ahead, Kundan. You go ahead. Go for it. You already put that in there too. Add it. Add it. Final
Dive
thought.
in, dive in, Kundan.
Yeah, yeah. For my final thought, I also want to make sure people are aware of these intergenerational colonial
Oh,
trauma
Malcolm
responses
Gladwell.
and how it's
Okay, Malcolm Gladwell also did the book Blink. I read Blink.
right. He did Blink, yeah. He did Blink, Tipping Point, yeah, and David and Goliath. Those are the really
Mm-hmm.
good books by him too. Um, but yeah, and I think a really good recent movie that really educates people on colonial trauma responses and especially generational trauma responses is Encanto. Actually, if you look at Encanto,
Oh
and
yes.
it also has a really great portrayal of how something that seems like a
Yes.
gift or a superpower, when it's used in the wrong way or in the wrong context, it kind of becomes like a burden or a
Mm.
curse until that
Yep.
trauma is healed. That's what happened in the movie. In reality, there's no real villain in that movie, by the way. There's an antagonist, but there's no
Mhm.
real human villain. The villain is the trauma
Mhm.
itself, which is why I love that movie.
Yeah.
Like, and it's one of the few movies without a villain, where they really show how trauma responses impact people. I mean, the individual is still, accountable and should be held accountable for their behavior, but it also, there should be empathy and understanding for why they're doing
Mm-hmm.
it as well. There should be
And
that
no
balance.
blame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Taking
balance.
away blame.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, as far as individual and collectivism, be aware of these trauma responses as well to really heal our communities on both the individual and collective level and really understand all of the different types of
Yes.
programming that's going on that encourage people and reward people really for being selfish, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
because being
Yep.
selfish
Yep.
perpetuates the oppressive system.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Oof.
and that was a point that I
Fire.
did want to talk about too. And I know we got to speak on it with the individualism versus collectivism and get it to the selfishness. Is that's why a lot of things that we're doing, if they're not celebrated or rewarded, then it's not gonna. Why is there incentive to continue doing it? So that's I'm so glad you brought that up at the
Exactly.
ending with it. But with that being said, again, I want to
Mhm.
say thank you to Crisss, thank you to Kundan.
Right, like that's why even for this Supreme Court, workshop that I'm doing, educating people, I'm like, okay, like it's not about the money, but at least my minimum expenses, like my Uber ride, should be paid. I'm gonna make
Yeah,
sure I'm paid for at least that.
expectation
Yeah,
be set.
yeah, hmm
Now to end with
yeah.
that. Again, thank you, Crisss. Thank you, Kundan, so much for coming through. And again, always sharing on this, y'all. Y'all's the regulars. This is the community, y'all. So everyone else out there too, just know that we appreciate y'all's thoughts, y'all's your love and support, and when y'all come in and share. So y'all part of this too, because again, we're moving towards elevating and just finding those solutions through conversation and talk. Um, but when it comes to wrapping up for today's episode, when it comes to current events, news, worldly news, or local news, main thing is please just be mindful and aware of what's happening, because ultimately it does have an impact on you in one way, shape, or form. You just have to be ready and prepared. So do that so that you can help out your loved ones, yourself, and those around you, so you can be properly prepared for what can come. Not say like you're fully prepared for everything, but you got something to, at least to work with. Second, when it comes to individualism versus collectivism, I agree with both Kundan and Crisss when it comes to it. They basically are layers within themselves. They work together, which is funny. Being individual, how you gonna come together with collectivism? But for you to be able to fully understand what it is to be an individual, and then an individual within a collective group, you must go on that trail to find that self. So it starts from there, but it can transition into a collective group in thought. And there is no versus. I agree. It is all coexisting, and they're there together for a reason. And lastly, when it comes to selfishness being a virus in affecting a community, unanimously, yes. On multiple levels and meanings, yes. But to be able to identify and know the difference, and to be able to spot those signs before it can affect the community, the preventive aspect of it, you have to be able to take the initiative, whether if it's for yourself noticing that, or having people in your corner to do that, again, as a community, before that ends up happening. Because what does it say? One bad apple can spoil the whole bunch.
Mm.
So if you're not able
Mhm.
to identify, or the person not able to identify that's what's happening, it can end up spreading within the community, and then what happens, it breaks down and it implodes in itself. Self-destruction, which is funny. How can it be a community to be self and a virus to
Virus.
do that to oneself? Yes. But
I see what you did there.
when it comes to that, again, y'all, thank y'all so much. This has been another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays. We will be back not next Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. I changed up the schedule again because life does happen. But shouts out to everyone that's been here, as well as those watching this now, as well as later on Instagram and YouTube. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button for your boy at A.D.V.I.S. Speaks, please, because there's going to be more content like this and other things to come, because now I'm in a different place in space. I might have some more funds to do some more things and support other folks, including Kundan and other people. So support your boy there so we can keep this movement going, and just having this set platform for not just myself, but for all of us. But with that, y'all, thank y'all so much for your time. Thank you, Crisss. Thank you, Kundan. And we will catch y'all not next Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. So peace, one love, and we're out.